Welcome back. Interlagos, Brazil. More heavy showers have come in the last few minutes. We have reports that they may be delaying the start here by 10 minutes, which is very much under the rules. As we have a quick look at the grid, of course, Barrichello, as we mentioned, on pole beside Coulthard, and Mark Webber, who showed some very, very good wet track form earlier, but I don't know if he'd like it this wet, alongside Raikkonen, the man who won for the first time in Formula One at the previous round in Malaysia. And on that subject, Raikkonen and indeed Jacques Villeneuve have been granted dispensation by the FIA to change engines overnight. Now, this was obviously under the grounds of safety, because the cars are in Parc Ferme and cannot be tampered with for any other reason. That is an interesting change, a bit of flexibility that I think Neil was, well, we talked about a little earlier. It's common sense more than anything else.
Well, yeah, I think it's a very smart move on the part of the FIA Technical Committee and headed up by Charlie Whiting, that when the whole intention of putting the cars in Parc Ferme is clearly to stop this business of having a special one-lap screamer engine. And Villeneuve reported in his qualifying lap yesterday that the engine was tightening up, so they were allowed to make application for an engine change, and that was done. You can see official confirmation now coming through that the start's been delayed. Huge Brazilian crowd, very passionate, on hand here to watch their man Rubens on pole, Ralf Schumacher there. You mentioned before, Billy, that the Brazilians have had great success at this event on about 10-year intervals, but Brazil generally has always been deeply passionate about Formula One, with drivers like Emerson Fittipaldi, as we look at Eddie Jordan, whose team this weekend runs its 200th Grand Prix race. And Giancarlo Fisichella qualifying very strongly, and that'll bring a smile to this man's face. And Jaguar, it's been a terrific weekend for them so far, and fulfilling some of the promise that has been shown in the first couple of races, but a little bit unfulfilled due to unreliability.
Now, we hear Verstappen's in the T car. Now, the other interesting aspect, Neil, what flexibility do they have under the wet conditions now with regard to those changes to cars from Parc Ferme?
Well, it sort of adds on to that comment I was going to make about the engines there, Bill, that the cars are locked away after qualifying and effectively are not normally allowed to change anything. But those two engines for Kimi Raikkonen and also for Jacques Villeneuve were allowed to be changed, but they can make small front wing adjustments. That's permitted under these rules. But what you can do in the cockpit of the car is change the sensitivity of all kinds of different things. For example, these cars have got a fly-by-wire throttle, not a mechanical throttle, pedal, throttle, cable, as we have in a conventional, traditional road car, or something like, for example, a V8 supercar. So you can change the sensitivity of the throttle. In other words, you can have a more docile throw in the pedal, and that is cockpit controllable, and that certainly helps for this wet weather running. They can change the diff mapping. It's electronic diff in these cars, so what you can do is change the preload in the diff, so it alters the characteristic for the way in which the car turns in, as we look at Fernando Alonso, so strong in the Malaysian Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. The other thing, of course, that's very important that can be changed is the level of traction control. These things are all cockpit adjustable, they can all be interrogated by the buttons on the steering wheel.
Jos Verstappen in the T car I mentioned, I believe he'll be starting from pit lane and with a full tank of fuel now, and that's an interesting little change in tactic there, and Paul Stoddart, of course, has signalled those sort of calls earlier on.
And it's worth us keeping a very close eye on what happens after the observation lap, because remember that in Melbourne, Raikkonen came in on the observation lap, they refueled and changed the tyres on the car. So those people that planned for a one-stop strategy, and there's been some speculation that there may have been some people one-stopping, they'll be in pretty good shape. That's Ralph Furman there, having his debut Grand Prix season. Last year's Formula Nippon champion from Japan, Juan Pablo Montoya there for Williams, and just keeping the helmet and visor dry. There may be people who come in early and adopt a one-stop strategy. I mean, effectively they actually have to make two, of course, then, but they'll go back to a heavy fuel load very early in the race and just stick it out. It'll depend a little bit on just what the medium range forecast is going to be going forward 90 minutes to 2 hours from here. That's Heidfeld in the Sauber. They've been strangely quiet this weekend. Some new aero parts on that car. Sauber have got a new wind tunnel in Switzerland, and after the last test up in Barcelona, they've been working hard. You can see the crazy Brazilians getting into it there. And I was going to make the point before that Emerson Fittipaldi, Nelson Piquet, Ayrton Senna, Rubens Barrichello. There's been a whole string of unbelievably successful Brazilian Formula One drivers.
Barrichello's led 3 Brazilian Grand Prix in '99, 2000 and in fact last year, but he's never won. In fact, he's only finished once. That was 4th in 1994. As we look at Jenson Button here, starting from 11th on the grid. It is a very significant race, not only for Barrichello with this amazing timeline that's developed in terms of Brazilian performance, but also in the last 13 years, the winner of this Grand Prix has gone on to win the championship on 10 occasions. So it is quite significant, and given the wet conditions, we wonder if Michael Schumacher...
Look at these little galoshes here. Rubens has got these overboots on his racing shoes in order to keep them dry. The last thing you want is any moisture on your feet, even though these cars are only a 2-pedal operation and the brake pedal traditionally is very big in these cars because of the left foot braking. You still don't want any moisture down in the cockpit, and obviously once your feet are installed down there, it's very difficult for the crew to get to them and dry them out.
I wonder how this bloke will go in the wet conditions. He did say he was worried about how wet it really was.
Well, Friday gave us a good indication there, Bill, because he ran very strongly in the wet. There's Heidfeld, and he's 12th on the grid, 14.6. Incidentally, last year's pole for Montoya was a 13.1, and this year's pole time was a 13.8, so they were just a little bit slower. Olivier Panis really disappointed in qualifying to end up just 15th. Expected more. Was actually quickest in one of the free practice sessions on Saturday and just didn't get it together in qualifying, and D'Amata was denied a lot of track time because of the wet conditions on Friday, and he was very unhappy with his car setup. But one of the guys that we must watch carefully in this race must surely be Schumacher. When you look at his record in Brazil, I mentioned this the other day on RPM, Billy, he's been there 11 times since 1992. He's won it 4 times. He's been second on 2 occasions. He's been third on 4 occasions, 5th once, which was his worst performance, and pole in 2001, as we look there at Kimi Räikkönen.
And, of course, admitting the mistake in Malaysia where he was a little ambitious going underneath Trulli, so he will be perhaps a bit more conservative. But there's been some remarkable comments about Schumacher. We're looking at Barrichello at the moment, but there's been some remarkable comments from Eddie Irvine and Jackie Stewart about Schumacher after just 2 rounds of the championship, questioning his ability and the number of mistakes he makes. So it doesn't take long to fall off that pedestal, does it? We'll take a quick break, come back and hopefully have a start soon after. Well, there was a high attrition rate at this round last year when 11 cars technically did not finish. One wonders what the attrition rate will be this year, given the setup of the cars and the extraordinary conditions here at Brazil. The fans don't give a damn. They're as happy as larks up there in the stands, but down here there's a lot of concern, I'd imagine.
Yes, it's not a good time for everybody because these cars are flighty to drive at the best of times, and when it's wet with a tyre that's not good at channeling water away, it can really make them a skateboard. And one of the problems is that this track is very high above sea level, in fact nearly 800 metres, Bill, so it's literally way up in the clouds, and that is going to work against us in terms of weather. And because it's so high, there's quite an enormous drop in both downforce and engine power, between about 8 and 10%. One of the other things that I find really interesting about the track is that it's one of only 2 circuits on the tour that runs anti-clockwise, whereas in Australia we've got a lot of circuits that run anti-clockwise. This one, and ironically enough, San Marino, the next round, run anti-clockwise, and that makes it for a peculiar problem in that the driver conditioning for their necks is around clockwise circuits. So had this been a dry race, and we still may get a dry line or a fully dry race here at some point, physical fitness and conditioning will be an issue as we take a great look there at a tyre warmer on one of the McLarens, which can preheat the tyres to almost any predetermined number. Most of them are around about 85 or 90 degrees. And you can see the aero shape of that front wishbone on the front of the McLaren there, Bill. The attention to detail on these racing cars is really extraordinary. Massive amount of changes made day to day, week to week with these cars, with 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week wind tunnel programs, and the developments ongoing, particularly in these first few races in the fly-away races, hard to say at this time of the morning, at the start of the season, where they're actually refining, in some cases, last year's cars prior to the introduction of the 03 models, which both Ferrari and McLaren are expected to debut at San Marino in a couple of weeks.
Half a dozen laps behind the pace car coming up, but we haven't got off the grid yet, of course, as we look at the man we talked about earlier, Verstappen, starting from pit lane and, excuse me, with a full tank.
And the reason for the running behind the safety car in the initial phase, and there it is, they'll be all funneled in behind Bernd Maylander, who's driving that car, is to try and reduce some of the standing water on the circuit. And this track is notorious for puddles and rivers almost. And if you had a look at some of the shots that we saw in qualifying on Friday of where people went off, for example, when Button went off, he just literally got onto a river and the car wriggled, sent him out onto the painted top of the ripple strip where it's very slippery, and off he went. So by running the cars around for the first half dozen laps, they'll be able to spit some of the water off and at least generate what we describe it as really is a less wet line. It's still wet, but it pumps the worst of the water away, and that's assuming, of course, that it's not continuing to hose down. They've really got quite a problem here. The reason, incidentally, for the wet weather tyre rule configuration that we have in 2003 was just simply a cost-cutting exercise. You can imagine the number of rims that you need, the number of tyres that you need to freight around the world if, for example, you permit 2 types of wet tyre. So if you had available a deep-cut, heavy, wet, very soft tyre, which might suit these conditions, you've by definition got hundreds, if not thousands, more tyres laying around over the course of the weekend. And that'll be the subject, no doubt, of great debate when they have this rules discussion later in April about what they're going to do in the fine-tuning of this 2003 rules package, which I still believe fundamentally, despite a lot of controversy, has been essentially, I think, successful, Bill. I think that there's been a lot of things happen this year. There's a tyre. That's a wet weather Michelin, and Mark Webber was saying in his notes that forwarded earlier in the day that he feels that Michelin have got a little edge over Bridgestone here this weekend, which I guess he would say, but they've certainly got a lot of strength other than for pole position on this grid. If you look at all the positions thereafter, and there is the front wet Michelin, and the reason I say front and make it and distinguish between that and the rear is it's quite a different pattern on the rear. If you actually look at the tread pattern front to rear on their wets, they're totally different, for example, to a V8 supercar which just has one type of wet in all 4 corners. Michael Schumacher talked about his success at this track, and it's been a pretty tough start for him. And just before we went to that break before, Bill, you made mention of the fact that he's already starting to take a hammering. So Jackie Stewart gave him a bit of an uppercut in the British press, and so did his old teammate Eddie Irvine, suggesting that he falters under pressure. I think it's a little bit early to start making observations like that, but certainly when you look at what's happened so far this year, he has had a difficult year by Michael Schumacher standards. You know, he made mistakes. He actually had a shunt in practice in Melbourne at the Australian Grand Prix, and then he went off twice in the race, did some underbody damage and knocked off one of the barge boards in the event, as you recall. Didn't get on the podium for the first time in many, many races. And then in Brazil, in Sepang, he made that mistake at turn 2 and copped a stop go for his trouble. And then yesterday made a little mistake going into turn 1 at about where that camera is positioned in that shot that we're looking at the moment, and it was enough to drop a couple of tenths off the lap. And when you look how tight that grid is, with just 5/100ths of a second covering the top 3 and just 2/10ths of a second covering the top 5, a very small mistake has a very big impact.
2 cars in pit lane there, I noticed, one behind Verstappen, and there's a lot of spray coming off the track there as the rest of the field gets off the line. And as we said, a number of laps will be taken now under the safety car. And we'll go to the commentators who we presume have a handle on what will take place during those laps, and also maybe fill us in on the car behind Verstappen's in pit lane. So we'll pick them up as soon as we can.
He's had his incident over the years.
Yeah, but you're not going to hurt yourself in the first corner. The problem is this pit straight. We know it's just a series of long lefts, you're unsighted, and the marshals cannot clear the cars out of the way, and you've got others steaming in. Maybe you can't even see the flags in these kind of conditions. The problem here for Charlie Whiting, the race director, is where does he get his information from? You've got a Mercedes out front that probably weighs 2,000 kilos, say 1,800 kilograms, 3 times the weight of a Formula 1 car. It's on fundamentally road tyres. It's a different animal altogether than those thoroughbreds that are following it along at about 60, 70 miles an hour. And so they can't really give solid feedback to the safety car driver. They've got to trust that some of the drivers are radioing in and giving information.
Yeah, new thing this year also is that the team owners are in constant contact with race control via the audio systems that they have up on the pit wall. So I happen to know that the race director has briefed everybody to say that he wants, if we have a situation like this, he wants to hear from certainly the leading drivers, the more experienced drivers, via their teams, what they believe the conditions are like. Clearly, the guy driving the safety car will be telling the race director where the standing water is, and look at that, plenty of standing water there. The race director stopped and had a look at that about half an hour ago on a track inspection, and spent about 10 minutes examining the drainage down there.
Well, an hour ago, we suddenly saw up on screen, and it had Kimi Raikkonen jump up out of his chair and leave his lunch to go and look at what they're doing. There was a fire engine and a hose. They were washing the track, which is a bit bizarre because obviously so much water's fallen. What they were doing is, where there's a river come across the track, so much mud has followed it, they had to actually put more water on the track to get rid of that mud.
So the safety car coming up the hill out of the Joncão corner. That's the pit lane entrance you can see on the right. And in a few seconds, the Brazilian Grand Prix will be underway. This is, as you can see, we're, well, one lap into it, in fact. Rubens Barrichello behind the safety car.
Well, that was a 2.5-minute lap. Normally would be something around 1 minute 15. The race starts officially, as you said, James, as it crosses the line for the first time. The 2 hours started as the safety car pulled away. So this lap will either be 71 laps or 2 hours. The 2 hours is now 3 minutes underway, although they're now on officially the first lap of the Grand Prix. The lap before was the traditional formation green flag lap they would run if they were under their own steam, and we've got a Toyota in the pit lane.
Yep, as predicted, Panis at least has come in to put some fuel in. I'm surprised that more of them haven't, actually, but maybe, as you were saying, Martin, the concern is that if the track does dry out and you're fat with fuel, that the tyres will wear out. So they've obviously been doing some calculating. Having said that, of course, there's still going to be a few more laps behind the safety car. We may well see 1 or 2 more of them coming in and refueling.
Look, you can't even see some of those cars. We can't see the cars in the distance, and that's when they're doing half speed. That's the problem they've got. Visibility is zero. It's like switching your wipers off on the motorway when it's pouring with rain. You cannot see anything. You cannot even see your own dashboard sometimes, and your own steering wheel. Your visor is so full of water when you're at speed.
So Rubens Barrichello assessing the conditions. In many ways, these conditions are ideal for Rubinho. He's been on pole 7 times in his Formula 1 career, and quite a few of those have been in wet, dry conditions. He's always excelled when the conditions are uncertain, and he'll be sitting there thinking, oh, when this race starts, I really am in the box seats here. David Coulthard's been very strong also in the wet. Won here back in 2001 in a wet race, beating Michael Schumacher in a straight fight on a wet day.
Coulthard's mighty relieved, I know, because he actually trimmed his car out of wing, took a bit of wing out of it yesterday, expecting to need to pass cars during the race down this long pit straight, and of course that compromised him enormously for the wet conditions. Luckily, they decided today, just because of the diabolical conditions, you could lift the car a little bit, and just putting on the wet tyres lifts the car, actually. They're designed to do that, which is a very clever little tweak. I only found out recently. So they get automatic ride height lift to try and clear some water just by putting the wet tyres on. But also, unusually then, they were allowed to change the front and rear wing as well. Normally they can just change radiator blanking panels and brake blanking panels, because clearly you're not going to be using the brakes anything like as hard on a day like this.
Yes, that rule, that new ruling that they were able to change just before the start of the race, the wings, was bad news for Michael Schumacher, as I found out just before this morning that he put a wet setup on the car yesterday for qualifying because he thought it might be a bit damp here today. So yesterday, when he was slower than Rubens Barrichello, qualifying 7th on the grid, part of the reason for that, and you pointed out in qualifying, actually, he looked like he had a different setup from Rubens. Part of the reason for that was he had gone with a wet setup, which means more wing in particular.
And softer suspension, which is why his car didn't look anything like as lively as Rubens. Well, that makes sense, because we stepped off the plane here Thursday and everybody's saying the weather forecast this weekend is awful, and so we're not that surprised now it's happened. Although, of course, back in Malaysia it was guaranteed to rain during the race, and we never as much as saw a speck of it. The great news is that perched up here in the top of the grandstands, which makes me slightly nervous because they rock when Rubens fans start jumping up and down, the whole tube framework moves around, but into the distance it is definitely much better at the moment weather-wise, and so I'm pretty sure, James, this race will get underway at some point.
Well, watching this race on television in a local hospital is one of our ITV colleagues. You may have read about it in the newspapers back in the UK, and we certainly wish her well. She's in an isolation ward there. No results yet on the test that she's had, but we wish her well and wish her a speedy recovery.
That's Sally Blower, one of our team members who's had a pretty tough week. But, these drivers, I think, are going to have a pretty tough afternoon. When I say the race will get underway, I mean properly underway. Of course, all of these laps count. And the other good news for the front runners is, of course, they're using about half as much gas cruising around at this speed, half as much fuel. So, you know, there'll be people on the pit wall furiously calculating how that extends their pit stop opportunity.
Well, normally you need about 2.15 kilos of fuel per lap here at Interlagos, so that drops it down to what at these kind of speeds?
My understanding was it was about 2.6 kilos, but yeah, I think they'll be using about half. I mean, the smart cookies will have it in top gear and just be tickling the throttle just to keep it the fuel consumption down as much as possible, knowing they should get decent warning when the safety car is going to come in. Then they can start pumping some heat into the brakes and the tyres.
We'll know that the safety car is going to come in when the lights go out on the top of it. You can see those flashing yellow lights up there on the top of the Mercedes-Benz. When they go out, you'll know that at the end of that lap, the safety car will be popping in. Rubens Barrichello then, the first man on the track, and David Coulthard, as we've said, behind him. And interestingly, Martin, yesterday was the 5th time in succession that David Coulthard has out-qualified his teammate Kimi Räikkönen. And I know it's interesting for David. He keeps getting asked these questions about this young teammate of his who's blowing him away in qualifying, and yet he's really responded. The back end of last season and the first part of this season, he's put Kimi in the shade in qualifying, hasn't he? Yes,
it's 5-0, I think, the last 5 Grand Prix, but Kimi's leading the championship. It was bad news for Coulthard, not coming away from Malaysia with no points from a small electrical problem. And then, of course, as we know, the championship is very, very tight. Just behind them, 5 drivers on 8 points, but Räikkönen out front on 16 at the moment. That new point system working a treat. But now they've completed more than 2 laps. If there is a big accident, the restart will make it a 2-part race. As such, they won't reset back to 0. But after 75% of this race, the race distance covered, which must be, James, you're a clever bloke, how many laps was that? 75% of 70, yeah. And around that time, then if it absolutely pours with rain again, I would think they will finish the race at that point and declare a full result, and therefore full points as well. I
remember back in 1991, the Australian Grand Prix only actually went for 14 laps with an absolute deluge. It was the day that Nigel Mansell broke his foot in an incident. Ayrton Senna won the race, but there was a race that only lasted 14 laps, and they awarded half points that day. And amazingly, do you remember, about an hour and a half later, the sun came out, and it was one of the nicest afternoons we'd had all week. It was just one of those, if only they'd waited an hour, it would have been fine.
Yes, indeed. Rubens choosing to stay very, very close behind the safety car. And he will then become the safety car when the safety car elects to come in. And look, still a lot of spray. Still, I'd be radioing in saying, hey, too much water. And rest assured, the camera can see through the spray much better than the human eye. And of course, we're at a high level. So we're looking down on, 6 foot of spray. If you're behind the car in front, you're looking into 20 or 30 feet of spray. And it's a completely different perspective inside that cockpit. I mean, many of you would say, hey, look, they can start the race now. Look, there's barely any spray. It looks so different inside that cockpit. But we're moving into the zone now where people will start to think, soon we'll get this underway.
Well, the track temperature has gone up, the air temperature also has gone up, and so is the barometric pressure, so the conditions would indicate that it is getting better. We've had no more rain, so we may well get this race started shortly. We've had 4 laps under the safety car, and hopefully not too many more. Certainly you can see it's such a hilly track here. All the water from pretty much the whole place is coming down to this place here. It's the lowest point on the circuit, hence the standing water there just in the middle of the track. Everyone taking different lines through there just to assess which is the best line to take for when they go green flag racing.
Yes, indeed. But definitely the spray beginning to subside, isn't it? Looking better. That is where the cars get all lively at the back end, start aquaplaning. And those, we call it a left kink 2 left kinks on that back straight. In the dry, it is a left kink. It's a nuisance, still enough to wrench your neck off 50 laps into the race. But in the wet, it actually becomes a corner effectively. So that's why it is so tricky in these conditions.
Well, interestingly, the lap before, under the pace car, they were doing 2-minute 12 laps, and it's gone out to about 2:16 now. They're going a bit more slowly than they were. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just the pace that the safety car driver is going at.
I think it is, but I think that's also why Barrichello's hustling a little bit. He's pushing the safety car. He wants to go faster. Those flashing red lights would send me mad in the good old days. In my day, they were just a solid red light. You can't see them anyway. But following a car with a flashing red light like that just mesmerises you. It's not what you need.
So 20 Grand Prix cars with full downforce. You can see how much water they shift, the big spray out of the back of Rubens Barrichello's car there. Certainly some parts of the track considerably drier. That uphill section there at Ferradura looks quite good now. This is where there's a fair bit of standing water always. Michael Schumacher spun here on Friday on his outlap in the wet qualifying session. More water lying here, as you can see, different lines. Welcome back to Interlagos in Brazil. We're waiting to get the safety car in so that we can go green flag racing here at Interlagos. We are 6 laps into a safety car started Grand Prix. They've been following this safety car now since the race director allowed the thing to get going at 2:15. It's a 71 lap race, and already, as I say, 5 of them down. And we're hoping, given that the conditions here seem to be improving and the spray seems to be subsiding, that we might get racing fairly soon.
Yeah, so under normal circumstances, James, with wet tyres, they'd be underway by now. I think they're really hanging it out with the safety car, knowing full well that everybody is on unsuitable tyres with those very lightly grooved. And that's what it looks like, even at low speed. That's how little you can see. There's that red flashing light of the car in front that sort of disappears occasionally and would certainly send me mad. But your senses go into, you become hypersensitive, and you're listening, you're looking, you're straining at high speed just to get an understanding of where you are and where is, and more crucially, where is the car in front of you. Ted?
Martin, we've been monitoring Juan Pablo Montoya's radio down here. Thanks very much to BMW Williams, by the way, for the opportunity to do that. The good news he's saying is that the puddles of water which caused most of the aquaplaning have gone. The bad news is that the rivulets we were talking about earlier are still just as bad. He reckons we've got a good few more laps to go behind this safety car.
Yeah, well, that's down to the tyres again then, because you know, we've started races before with more water than that on the track. So it's just, did you see the amount of slipping and sliding we had there on Michael Schumacher's car? That's because there's no temperature in those tyres. The pressure goes right down, and that is a major problem. It's an extra problem, James, because when the tyre pressure goes down, the car rides a little bit lower as well, and therefore more chance of the underneath of the car turning into a toboggan.
Yes, they're flat-bottom cars, these. It's one of the big problems with the design of them on wet days. It's not just about how deep the grooves are on the wet tyres. It's about the fact that it's flat underneath, and the cars sit about 2 or 3 millimetres off the ground. It's that close, and that's what causes the problems. When that comes into contact with puddles of water, the control goes completely, and as David Coulthard was saying on the grid, it becomes like a rudder, really, the floor underneath your car steering you off into the boonies.
Now, I know that race director Charlie Whiting is not at all happy about this regulation, because basically it puts it on his shoulders. The teams have gone for a gamble with the tyres. The tyre manufacturers have gone with the Inters. As I said on the grid, crazy knowing how many really extremely wet races we've had here in qualifying sessions. But of course now with a safety car scenario, that's put on to the owners, has put on to Charlie as to when to let these things go. But they're the ones that have put unsuitable tyres on and brought unsuitable tyres to Brazil.
Yeah, Charlie being Charlie Whiting, the FIA's race director, enormously experienced man. Safety car is coming in at the end of this lap then. We've just been told by Mr. Whiting himself through the communication system here as Giancarlo Fisichella into the pit lane from the looks of things.
Yeah. Well, it's... I don't know why. If you were going to do that, you should have come in early, unless he's got a problem. But it looks like they're expecting him in, and they're just going to fuel it up and take a gamble. And they're changing the tyres, which is unusual. They've got warmer tyres, I guess. Tyres will be up to full pressure and temperature. He can scoot round now and pick up the back of the field. So Jordan, that's a tactical move then. They were waiting for that message to say the safety car's coming in. Problem is, the amount of spray he's going to get at the back of the field is nobody's business. He's even behind all those that started in the pit lane.
Indeed he is. It's been quite good news actually this for Cristiano De Mata, who qualified almost to the back of the grid, and with all the people having problems and other people diving in for tactical fuel stops, he's gone up to 14th on the grid, which is great news for him. So we're going to go racing here in Interlagos shortly. The grid then. Rubens Barrichello is first on the road. David Coulthard second. Mark Webber for Jaguar. We haven't talked much about him yet, but I've no doubt he'll feature this afternoon. Is third. Kimi Raikkonen fourth. Jarno Trulli fifth on the grid. Sixth, Ralf Schumacher. Seventh, his brother, Michael Schumacher, who very unaccustomed for him. Worst qualifying for over 60 Grand Prix for Michael Schumacher. Fisichella we've seen dive into the pits, means that Montoya has no longer got Fisichella in his way. He can attack Michael Schumacher from the start, and we've seen him pass Schumacher, and safety car starts here before it Interlagos. The tension then building, the samba drums beginning to beat in the grandstands. We're going to get some racing at Interlagos very shortly.
It's good. I hate it when the commentators have to work harder than the drivers, but now they are going to have to work overtime. They're going to have about zero grip into the first corner. It's going to feel like greased ice because their tyres are cold, they're low pressure, everything's cold, and they've not had any warm-up this morning, no exploratory laps. The first time they go through turn one at speed is the first time since yesterday afternoon. A real challenge for these Grand Prix drivers.
And look how Rubens Barrichello is bunching up the field. The safety car comes in, the crowd are cheering. Let's get back and have a look at what Rubens is doing though. He hasn't hit the gas yet. When's he going to hit it? Everybody's waiting. Webber's alongside David Coulthard. They're all waiting to see when Coulthard's going to drop the throttle and Barrichello's going to drop the throttle. Here he goes! Here he goes!
Not smart thing to do at all, Rubens. That's bunching the pack too much. He should have just taken a sensible run, and now Coulthard might punish him for that down into turn one. And as long as Coulthard doesn't go and lock his brakes, which he hasn't done, Coulthard takes an easy lead then. Barrichello outsmarting himself.
Yeah, David Coulthard takes the lead of the Brazilian Grand Prix from Rubens Barrichello. And, well, as you say, Martin, it didn't work out for him, that tactic. Mark Webber has managed to maintain third place. Kimi Raikkonen fourth, Trulli fifth, Ralf Schumacher sixth. But look at this, look at Raikkonen attacking Webber, and Webber's attacking Barrichello as Ralf Furman comes in.
They're going to put the same ploy with Furman then, who we believe is in the spare car now. New tyres and a tank of fuel. They really should have just queued them up if they're going to do that, and done that before the race got underway. They're going to go a lap down. He's still struggling to get a gear too. There's Barrichello, he's second. Coulthard scampering off into the distance.
Well, Barrichello seemed to not be all that confident with his car, and Webber attacks him down the inside. That's Heidfeld off the racetrack, but it looked to me as though Mark Webber in third place as the Sauber gets a little dusting of... oh, look at that, Raikkonen almost alongside Webber. They touched, I think.
I'm not sure whether it was just a spray coming off as Raikkonen took to the curb, but Barrichello extremely cautious, it has to be said, and that's giving Coulthard the space he wanted, and he's not got any spray in front of him either. And Webber right in there too, look, for Jaguar in third place.
It looks like the Williamses are on the move behind. I think Ralf Schumacher attacking the fifth place man, Renault of Jarno Trulli. So a great scrap going on there in that back bunch behind Raikkonen. Trulli, Ralf Schumacher, Michael Schumacher, and Montoya also on the move as well. Look at Raikkonen though, he's having a go at Barrichello. Can he make it stick?
Can he make it
Yes,
stop?
he can. Oh, nice move. Runs a little bit wide, but he's got track position. Where's Mark Webber gone? Down to fourth.
Yes, Webber is first, second, third, fourth, fifth actually for Mark Webber. I think I saw him coming into that corner. So again though, we've seen the Michelin wets on the McLaren looking good, and so too is the Michelin shod Williams BMW of Montoya as he takes over the place from Rubens Barrichello. So Montoya up into third, Coulthard, Raikkonen, Montoya.
Yep, the order, just to bring you up to date, this is lap 10 of the Brazilian Grand Prix. Coulthard leading Barrichello by, well, sorry, leading Raikkonen, but Raikkonen closing right up on Coulthard. Barrichello dropping down the order as well.
Coulthard really lost a lot of time somewhere to Kimi Raikkonen on that lap. Raikkonen appears to be more confident at this stage for whatever reason, just taking meters out of Coulthard.
And Montoya, we believe, has gone up into third place. Look at Raikkonen having a look down the inside of his teammate, but Coulthard resists. Teammates there having a good scrap. The Williams is joining them very quickly indeed. And Montoya having a pretty special start to this Grand Prix. His teammate Ralf Schumacher has dropped back to 7th place. Michael Schumacher has dropped down to 8th.
Coulthard just put a wheel on the white line, lost some traction coming out of the corner. We'll give Raikkonen a good look at him as well. Look at the amount of spray they've got. Remember, they're on intermediate tyres still, and Raikkonen will get a look up the inside of Coulthard. It'll be a brave move, though, against your teammate in these conditions, and he's made it work.
Wow! Kimi Raikkonen puts down a marker for David Coulthard. Coulthard knew he couldn't chop across him. It's his own teammate. What's he supposed to do? Raikkonen forced him into a position where he just had to let him through. But Coulthard's got lost track. Montoya goes around the outside, up onto the wet paint. They're side by side. They almost touch down the back straight. And Coulthard gets out of the throttle. Brave move by Juan Montoya. Has he run wide though, Martin?
No, he'll save that one. So the two leaders then, they've got so much more confidence than anybody else. They're lapping 2 to 3 seconds faster than anybody else on the racetrack. Raikkonen and Montoya, the car's working underneath them. They're feeling good about it. For whatever reason, Coulthard went off at a great pace, but now has lost confidence somewhere.
Let's have another look. There's been an incident here. That's one of the Renaults, and that's Ralf Schumacher, probably Jarno Trulli. They were together in 6th and 7th places. Both of them seem to have resumed, though. A little bit of contact there between those two cars. Here's your race leader, though, the man who won 2 weeks ago in Sepang, Malaysia, Kimi Raikkonen.
Yes, the World Championship leader by 6 points. And car number 4 is off the track. That is Ralf Schumacher. We saw that happen, so Ralf off the track. And Raikkonen coming over to lead the Grand Prix. And look then, Michael Schumacher passing Barrichello too now.
Yeah, Rubens Barrichello was in 4th place. Can't see where Mark Webber's got to. Is he in front of the Barrichello-Schumacher combo, or is he behind them? He was behind Barrichello at the end of the last lap. Hasn't come across the start-finish line yet. There he is. And there are the two Ferraris behind him. So Webber had got in front of Barrichello as well. Rubens Barrichello clearly struggling with some kind of problem. That's Fernando Alonso, that's Jenson Button, and that was Jarno Trulli going through. Raikkonen leads on lap 12 then. Let's just take stock. 2nd, Montoya. 3rd, Coulthard. 4th, Webber. 5th, Michael Schumacher. 6th, Barrichello. 7th, Alonso. 8th, Button. 9th, Trulli. 10th, Jacques Villeneuve. And what about this for Justin Wilson? Up 8 places at the start, and he's now up into 12th place.
And what's really strange here is we've got Raikkonen and Montoya 3 seconds a lap faster than anybody else. Don't know if it's confidence, setup, tyre pressure, ride height, but those two are just so hooked up, and they're just steaming away from the field, although Coulthard now beginning to come back a little bit to Montoya. Ted, what can he tell us?
Martin, I'm down at the McLaren garage. It's fantastic. It's a pit full of extremely nervous but excited people. I think what we're seeing is no problems really with David Coulthard's car. There's no worry on the face of his engineers. What it is that Coulthard's a canny lad. He knows there are 60 more laps left to go in this race. Anything could happen. Let them go off and let's play the long game.
Yeah, well spotted there, Ted, because Coulthard's just done the fastest middle sector and coming back again at Montoya now. Just wanted to obviously see where it was all at. But no such problems for the 23-year-old up front. He clearly just wants to get on with it this afternoon. Now look, Coulthard coming back at Montoya, obviously got the car up to where he needs it now, and we've got a great three-way scrap. But behind them, Mark Webber 5.5 seconds drift, but also going very, very well.
Yep, Webber set the fastest first sector of the race so far. The track is getting faster and faster. The rain hasn't started to fall again yet. Tremendous amount of spray flying around on the pit straight. We're just above it here in the main grandstands opposite the pit straight. That's David Coulthard, who was very bold here back in 2001, putting a move on Michael Schumacher to take the win here in the wet conditions. Today, a little bit more cautious, a little bit more circumspect, I think is the order of the day for him. And you were talking about confidence a moment ago, Martin. Kimi Raikkonen said yesterday afternoon he was asked how much more confidence that win in Sepang has given him. He said, so much more confidence. I feel that there's no question marks around me anymore. I know I can do the job. I know I can lead. I know I can win races. And he says, I feel a weight off my shoulders. And that's from someone who's only done 2 seasons of Formula One.
I had lunch with him today, and he was more relaxed than I was. He's just, it just all seems to go over his head. He's leading the World Championship. It's raining so hard that you can barely see outside the window. And the only thing that did catch his attention, as I said earlier, was when he saw them watering the track while it was raining so hard. But otherwise, he very much is a cool young man.
Coming across the line then to complete lap 13. I've always wanted to hear a lot of Grand Prix drivers have an espresso after their lunch before the Grand Prix. Did he have one?
Don't know. I wasn't watching that closely, James.
It wouldn't have made him all that calm if he had. Certainly he's driving beautifully at the moment. Raikkonen leading on lap 14. Those are the margins you can see. Juan Montoya always been good here in Brazil. Should have won his first Grand Prix on his first run here. But, of course, collided with Jos Verstappen. Coulthard third. Mark Webber doing a super job in fourth place for Jaguar. Again, setting the fastest first sector of the lap. And he's in touch. He's just 8.2 seconds behind Raikkonen and only 4 seconds behind Coulthard.
Yes, and Webber on the move. And so is Michael Schumacher in 5th place, too. He's now 6 seconds ahead of Barrichello. And it's not... If your car's hooked up, if you've got the balance, you've got the tyre pressures, you can get away with it. And if you can't, you're totally at sea. But Webber is flying in 4th place and will soon, very soon, be right up behind Coulthard and Montoya, with Michael Schumacher just behind him.
Yeah, Webber was half a second faster than Michael Schumacher in that first sector. So there's nothing wrong with that Jaguar at the moment. I'm told it's got the fuel to go about 24 laps into this race. We've had obviously quite a few laps under the safety car, but look at this. This is the McLaren of David Coulthard now, finding a bit more grip, finding a bit more speed, and he's giving a run at Montoya. Montoya's had a slow run out of Juncao. Don't know what happened there, but Coulthard just, well, candy from a baby.
Yeah, you'd have to think that Montoya, slightly different line, but his traction control looked like it was working too much in there at that time. And Coulthard then easily taking 2nd place from Montoya. Once again, Mark Webber and Michael Schumacher in 4th and 5th. There they are in the background, very, very fast. Schumacher now, fastest man on the racetrack. The wise old heads are now beginning to say, OK, now I know where the track's at. Let's get going.
And I wonder whether perhaps Montoya might have taken a little bit too much out of his tyres, because our F1 ITV pit crew monitoring Montoya's radio are saying he's saying that his rear tyres are going off. He's losing grip. That's his problem.
Yeah, well, he's going to fall into the clutches of the similarly tired Webber and then Michael Schumacher, who's always in the past been so good in these difficult conditions, really that 6th sense of knowing how much grip there's going to be before you get to the corner and not after it. Montoya, look, absolutely struggling at the moment. Webber's going to be all over him like a rash anytime soon. And Coulthard 5 seconds behind Raikkonen now for the McLaren 1-2.
And look at Michael Schumacher. This is where he spun on Friday, having a look down the inside of Mark Webber. He's obviously got a lot of confidence through that corner now in these wet conditions. Webber's going to really struggle to keep Michael behind him here, I fancy, because Schumacher is on the move, on the attack here at the Brazilian Grand Prix on lap 15. Montoya, they can both sense, is something of a wounded animal, and Schumacher goes alongside Webber. I think Schumacher may well have got Mark Webber.
There's a lot more grip at the inside of Juncao. Coulthard found it to pass Montoya, and I think Michael's found it now. There's so much more grip if you just keep a tight line, and Montoya was going outside and running along the white line, and therefore you can hear the traction control desperately trying to hold up the engine and not spin the rear wheels. So there's a special line out of that last corner that needs to be found.
Fastest man on the racetrack, David Coulthard, now 4 seconds behind teammate Raikkonen, who leads this Grand Prix. We've got a McLaren 1-2 on the track, as we have in the World Championship. Montoya there, struggling to resist the advances of Michael Schumacher. This is for 3rd place in the Grand Prix. Schumacher 4th, Webber 5th, 6th Barrichello now, 7th Alonso, 8th Button, 9th Trulli, 10th Ralf Schumacher.
And if he has burned his rear tyres a little bit, Montoya, it'll be in the traction zones. The exit of the very slow corners where he hurts. At high speed, the downforce somewhat compensates, but really seriously under pressure, isn't it? But this is where he'll struggle to get that traction, and that's why the Ferrari can slingshot out. Montoya won't yield too easily, but he's having to, because he knows he hasn't got the grip when he gets there. Michael just drives around the outside of him, confident that Montoya wouldn't tag his right rear wheel.
Michael Schumacher then, beautiful pass for position. He's up to 3rd now, and he's 9 seconds behind the leader, Kimi Raikkonen, on lap 16. What are the other margins then I need to tell you about? Mark Webber in 5th is 10 seconds behind the race leader. Rubens Barrichello dropping back even from Mark Webber now, over 7 seconds behind him.
Coulthard just took best part of 2 seconds out of Raikkonen. Has Raikkonen pushed his wet tyres too early, or what's going on there? Because now they're having to get on with it though, because Michael Schumacher up into 3rd place and looking pretty handy.
So what do we mean by burning the tyres? Obviously putting too much work through them. The concern there is that they need to get these tyres to last until their first fuel stops. Our understanding going into this Grand Prix was, as I said, that Mark Webber was going to pit around about lap 23 or 24 under normal conditions. The McLaren's pitting sort of in the high 20s, Williams and the Ferraris possibly in the low 30s. with the safety car period we had, that's extended that by a few laps. But they've got to make these tyres, Martin, last to that pit stop window, haven't they?
Yes, they have. They can bring the pit stop window forward a little bit. It's what it's called a window, because it's an amount of space where you can fit a pit stop in a number of laps, if you like, where it is sensible to pit, and you can bring that forward if you want to and extend your middle run. And there's the two leaders then, the first and second rather, in the same small piece of straight. And really tremendous traction they're getting out of that last corner. Schumacher is on a blistering lap at the moment in third place. He's 7 seconds behind the two McLarens at the moment. Once again, Montoya. Now Montoya is switching to that slightly tighter line on the exit to desperately try and find a bit of extra grip. Sometimes off the racing line you get a bit of grit and a bit less used tarmac, and you find more speed, something the karters know very well about, the kart racers. But at the moment, Webber really not able to do much about Montoya, and look then at Barrichello just behind them. He also now is getting some good speed up. New fastest lap by Michael Schumacher, a 1:24.3. The leader's doing a 1:26.1.
Montoya certainly lost time on that lap, and so did Mark Webber, and that's allowed, look, Rubens Barrichello, who was 6 seconds behind them, to close right up to the back of them. A spinner here, one of the Minardis, Verstappen, getting onto the asphalt there on the runoff area.
It's Wilson.
I beg your pardon.
And he's, according to the computer, he has stopped down there. Did not get go. Yes, indeed. Now we're seeing it out of the replay. Wilson, it appears, spinning out of the race.
It's Verstappen as well who's stopped, I think. Jos Verstappen, car 19, has stopped out the race. So if that's the case, not a good day really for the European Minardi squad, especially for Justin Wilson, who was doing so well, up to 12th place in the early stages of this race. Lap 18 then. Coulthard now just 1.4 seconds behind his teammate Kimi Räikkönen. Michael Schumacher, though, on the move. Look at this, 6.3 seconds behind. That's been a shunt for Olivier Panis in the Toyota. He's ripped the rear wing off it.
Down in 17th place, and with the big runoff here as they got here now, has he been hit from behind? Oh, that's Ralph Furman about to come in and whack the back of him. How did that happen? Did Ralph touch somebody, or did he have a front suspension failure down that straight? And I think it's a front suspension failure. He had that earlier on, didn't he? Was it Melbourne? But what's happened is his front, maybe he's tagged a car earlier in the race, but the front just giving away, breaking like an egg.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen it quite like that. Not a front right suspension like that. And a lot of debris on the track now for everybody to deal with. Montoya there, Michael Schumacher, as Webber, and Barrichello, pardon me. Sorry
to interrupt, James, but Alonso getting into the action as well now. Jenson Button back there in 8th. So we're getting a little bit of a traffic jam behind Juan Pablo Montoya. And now we're getting quite a serious dry line in some of these high-energy corners where they really, with the downforces, pushing the car down into the road, and they're beginning to clear some space. But a lot of debris down into turn 1. Safety car has been deployed.
Well, Kimi Räikkönen had David Coulthard breathing down his neck. The Scotsman had closed up to within 0.4 of a second for him, so he's not lost too much to Coulthard, but they've both lost a lot to Michael Schumacher, who was 4.5 seconds behind them. Yes, he was catching them, but this is really what Michael Schumacher wanted, and it's going to take a little while to clear the debris away from this track, I think.
The man who'll be most happy is Montoya. He's doing 1:28s, and Schumacher's doing 1:24s. He'd already fallen about 15 seconds adrift, and they're pitting.
Yep.
Coulthard, Michael Schumacher, all pitting.
Yep, smart move. This is lap 19 then of the 71-lap Grand Prix. They were going to be coming in for a pit stop deep into the 20s probably. They're all taking advantage of this.
Straight race then. How will they fuel this Ferrari? Can they get him out in front of Coulthard? They've dropped the front down very quickly. Did not change the tyres from what I could see. And Coulthard gets out and remains in front of Michael Schumacher. They were second and third. Räikkönen electing to carry on.
Yeah, Räikkönen did not pit. Quite a lot of cars coming in now. Montoya, Barrichello, Alonso, Webber, Button, Trulli, Ralf Schumacher, Villeneuve, all in the pits.
We've now got a near collision, Ted.
Yes, it's depending on which teams are queuing the cars. Renault have queued the cars, taken both Alonso and Trulli in. Williams have also queued the cars. Ralph has just come in. Montoya almost hit Trulli as he was coming in. Räikkönen will be in next. I can tell you what they have done to Montoya's tyres. They just put them on. They've actually increased the tyre pressures, trying to help him with these wet tyres. Now we've got a problem with Trulli's pit stop. They're very late on the right rear tyre.
So a lot of of drama in the pit lane then. The job now, and it's good news for Coulthard and Michael Schumacher, because they've lost nothing on the racetrack and they're refueled. Raikkonen has lost out quite badly here because he didn't choose to pit. So you're looking at second and third place man who have had a free pit stop, James.
Yeah, and one would imagine that Raikkonen would have been offered the chance to come in first, seeing as he was the race leader. So one presumes that he said, no, I'll stay out. Coulthard said, I'll take it. And in they come, because otherwise they would have to have queued, wouldn't they? Raikkonen would have been in front, Coulthard would have to sat there waiting, and he would certainly have lost track position to Michael Schumacher there.
Yes. So they're shuffling the pack then. Montoya did get out in fourth place. It appears that he didn't trip over truly in the pit lane. We're waiting for Montoya to go through the second sector time, actually, while they reshuffle the pack. And there you have then first, second, third, and it is Montoya. What's that in the middle? There's a Toyota in there somewhere. Where's he coming from, James?
Good question. He was shown as being 12th. At the end of the previous lap, so we'll wait until they complete this lap and we'll find out where D'Amata is. We're under a safety car here for the second time in the Brazilian Grand Prix. This is lap 20. Look at the debris.
The energy goes into the suspension in a different way, and didn't hit his teammate, and a very innocent and somewhat surprised Olivier Panis is taken out of the Grand Prix. A very, very scary moment for Ralf Furman.
Well, we're getting reports from the pits that Fernando Alonso has had to come in again because the team put slicks on his car at the first pit stop. Now, surely they would have seen that before they released him, so maybe it was a tactical move that did not work. Too soon for the slicks.
Either that or they've just, remember, they're all in blankets, and sometimes mistakes are made with these tyres.
Yeah, but when the tyre blankets come off before the guy releases, surely he would have seen they were slicks. There's a big difference in appearance between them, isn't there?
There is, although, because these days they've still got grooves in the slicks. But, yeah, I'm not sure. The mechanics are really focused on getting the wheel on and getting their hand up in the air to say they've got their wheel. They're looking at the wheel nut. I don't think they're having a general look around at which tyres the driver's chosen.
Chap there on his, not on his mobile, I think he's on a walkie-talkie to the Chief Marshal, kicking bits of carbon fibre debris out of the way, and it's very sharp carbon fibre. You really do have to clear it away because a tyre passing over it, the shards of carbon fibre easily could get punctured. 21 laps into this race then, second safety car period. There's two drivers, just spectators for the rest of the afternoon. Ralf Furman on the left, Olivier Panis on the right, both involved in the same incident, and no doubt both as confused as each other about exactly why that happened. Lap 22 of the 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix. We're under a safety car here at Interlagos, the second time this afternoon. I told you this might be an afternoon to remember, didn't I? And I can tell you now that the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap, and we will be green flag racing again. Let me just tell you then the order at the start. Kimi Raikkonen, well, he's already taken a safety car restart as a race leader. He did it in Melbourne, and he did it impeccably. Coulthard second. Michael Schumacher, he's the danger man for McLaren now, in third. Before this safety car came out, Michael Schumacher was the fastest man on the racetrack without doubt. Cristiano D'Amata has not come into the pits like many cars have, and so he's up into fourth place in the Toyota. Rubens Barrichello is fifth, he's pitted. Montoya is sixth, he too has pitted. We're hearing from our F1 ITV pit crew that there was a bit of a mix-up at Renault, and Fernando Alonso initially went out on a set of slicks, did one lap and then had to come back in again for a set of wets. That has dropped him down into 16th place. Jenson Button, he's been in the pits as well. He's 10th, with Mark Webber in the Jaguar just in front of him in 9th place. Four cars have dropped out. Panis and Furman were involved in an incident just a moment ago, which is why we have this safety car. Furman's front suspension, that's him on the right, collapsed, and he clouted the back of Panis, the man on the left car. Those two are both out. Wilson has stopped out on the track, and so has Nick Heidfeld. This is lap 22.
Yes, and you correctly reported what it said on the computer here a while back, James, that Verstappen had stopped, but he hasn't. Verstappen was running absolutely fine, so I don't know how that one came up on the computer here, but he's in 11th place in the Minardi.
Now, Before we saw Rubens Barrichello make a mistake when he should drop the throttle and really push this field. Will Kimi Raikkonen make the same mistake? Look, he's seeing if they're all there. He's going to do it on the turn into Juncao. Coulthard's ready for it. So's Michael Schumacher. Very, very experienced drivers, those two. The less experienced Raikkonen has got a good drive out of Juncao and up the hill. He's done it again. A very nice restart from Kimi Raikkonen. De Mata's done well also in the Toyota. He goes through the frame. Barrichello fifth. They're not allowed to overtake until they cross the start-finish line as they do now, and De Mata attacking Barrichello. And look at this, who's this coming at the inside? Wow, was that Ralf Schumacher? Montoya it was. Montoya trying to have a go at Barrichello. He came from so far back.
He did indeed, and Barrichello, I would imagine, had to just get out of the way then, otherwise he's going to be taken out. Montoya taking no prisoners whatsoever down into that first turn, and De Mata coming under pressure in the sole remaining Toyota from the Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello. He moves up then to fourth place, and Barrichello's back in front of Montoya somehow.
Wow, look at this. Montoya attacking De Mata now into the long right-hander. They're side by side. Not traditionally regarded as an overtaking place here at Interlagos, which is one of the tracks on the Grand Prix calendar where it is relatively easy to pass, certainly into turn one. Out the front, though, Kimi Raikkonen. I must remind you that he's not made a pit stop for fuel and tyres. Look at Michael Schumacher attacking David Coulthard. Both of these two guys have made pit stops, and they will be thinking now that the race really is between them, because Raikkonen's going to have to pit sometime in the not-too-distant future.
Yes, Raikkonen's going to have to get on with it now, because the two guys behind him have a pit stop in their pocket over him. He hasn't stopped, so he will pull away from them because they're running a lot more fuel. Coulthard electing to run that wider line through Juncao. He's still getting enough traction, but surely they looked like there was more grip on the inside there, certainly earlier in the Grand Prix, and good straight line speed for the Mercedes-Benz then of Coulthard, and he pulled away from Michael Schumacher. So McLaren 1-2, Ferrari 3-4. I don't really understand what happened to Montoya.
Well, he's currently right behind Cristiano De Mata in sixth place, De Mata fifth. Seventh is Pitsonia in the Jaguar, ahead of his teammate now, Mark Webber. Pitsonia has not pitted, though. Mark Webber has. So clearly in that little battle, Webber looking better than Pitsonia. Jenson Button is in ninth place. He's pitted. So is Ralf Schumacher, who's 10th. Verstappen is 11th. He has not pitted. Fisichella has, so has Villeneuve. Alonso, we heard about his mix-up. He's had to make 2 pit stops. And Trulli and Frentzen, the only runners still. 16 cars on this 24th lap of the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Raikkonen then, obviously he's been he's 23 laps into the Grand Prix. He's probably used the equivalent of about 17 or 18 laps worth of fuel under safety car conditions, but he surely is much lighter at the moment than second and third place man Michael Schumacher, and he somehow needs to make that count at this stage of the Grand Prix. Barrichello keeping a watching brief on this squabble for second place.
Well, bearing in mind what happened in Australia, presumably Raikkonen's hope is that this track will dry out enough in the next 10 laps or so that he'll need to everyone will need to come in anyway to put slicks on. Do you see any chance of slicks in the next 10 laps?
No, because wait till they come out of this chicane. I've been watching it for a couple of laps. There's obviously some residual water. Watch now, look, through turn 3. The amount of standing water. There's a river going across there. It hasn't rained for an age here. Some parts of the track are 50% dry, but you'll not get through that on slick tyres at the moment, so you'll have to stay with the wets. So we know that Coulthard and Michael Schumacher did put new tyres on as well, so they're not in danger of burning through the treaded part of their wet tyres. And big accident.
Montoya and Pitsonia. It looks like Montoya on the left in the BMW Williams, Pitsonia on the right. Here's what happened, Martin.
Yes, and got away from Pitsonia, aquaplaned, and I've got a feeling that Montoya's just going to have his own accident. No, he's already gone off. So Montoya, they both aquaplaned on the same. That's what I was just talking about in turn 3, and there's just new water coming from somewhere, James.
Yep, there is. It must be coming out of some drainage hole or something somewhere. It's certainly a downhill section. The bit where we are at the moment on the pit straight is above that, and clearly water pouring out onto the track, and those two caught out by it.
Well, the other drivers will be lucky in a way, because hopefully the teams are radioing them saying, mind turn 3, be careful in turn 3. But now, of course, there'll also be a lot of waved yellows. But if you back off with too much speed, you lose downforce, and you're more likely to aquaplane and join the party in the hedge.
Well, Kimi Raikkonen is not getting away from his pursuers, just 1.7 seconds now ahead of Coulthard, with Michael Schumacher right behind the Scotsman, and Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari also looking very strong. At the moment, you'd have to say there's not much to choose between the two types of tyre. The Bridgestone on the Ferrari is looking pretty good, so's the Michelin on the two McLarens, and Kimi Raikkonen will be ruining that decision not to come in for a pit stop when the safety car came out, because at the moment it looks as though it might be likely to cost him a race win here. The race, you have to say at the moment, is between Coulthard, Michael Schumacher and Barrichello, this second, third and fourth battle. 46 laps to go here. There's what tension, unbelievable Grand Prix.
Yes, there's a long way to go yet, James. I think there's mistakes to be made. There's still some strategy to play out. Pitzonia, he just went off and had his own accident really, and just collected up the residue of Montoya's own accident. Of course, they tagged in the first. He's the man that he couldn't help it, knocked off Montoya's wing in that sort of multiple shunt in turn 2 in Malaysia 2 weeks ago. So Pitzonia, well, I don't think there's a lot he can do about it. The trouble is, you know, you go through a corner 24 times and it's okay. Go through the 25th and the water's a millimetre deeper. Your tyres can't quite cope with it, and as I say, you're turning in. It suddenly becomes a canoe.
This is the battle then at the front. The top 4 in the order you can see. There's a superb scrap as well going on for 6th place between Mark Webber and Ralf Schumacher in the BMW Williams. Louise, what can you tell us?
Drivers already probably having problems with standing water. I think they're about to get a bit more. There's the first
Shimmy off. Schumacher's off.
Michael Schumacher has crashed. Sorry, Louise, but as Martin spotted, Michael Schumacher's gone straight on in the same place as Pitzonia. Is it? Yes. Yes, there's where Montoya's car. That's Pissonia's car. Schumacher's made the same mistake.
Yeah, they need to get out of there ASAP, because others can well go in there. Look, and Michael, that's what I was telling you about. It's fine one lap. The next lap is a fraction more water, and it's good night. Safety car is out again. They're having to they'll get in there and try somehow to clear some of that water, but that water's coming from another source.
This gives Kimi Raikkonen the chance to make the pit stop he didn't do first time round, and exactly as you were saying just a moment ago, there's still a long way to go, still a lot of mistakes to happen, but this time it won't work out quite so well for Raikkonen.
And did you see the caterpillar on the in the area as well, where Michael went into the tyre barrier just a little bit shy of a broken Jaguar and a caterpillar digger? This reminds me so much of '94 in Suzuka when we had the same thing, where I hit a marshal and smashed his leg to pieces. The marshals are in there trying to clear the way for trying to clear the debris, but of course, you know, if one can spin off, 2 can, and now we've seen a 3rd go off on the same water. The safety car is going to pick them up after the critical corner, unfortunately, because that's where the pit exits. So let's hope they all make it through turn 3 while that caterpillar's on the track.
Kimi Raikkonen is in the pits. The race leader has come into the pits, and that means that David Coulthard leads the Grand Prix. The field is streaming past us now. Raikkonen certainly lost quite a bit of track position here. Looks like D'Amata's coming in also for Toyota. He was the other guy who didn't pit first time round.
Well, we didn't see the nozzle go on, but it appeared a fine pit stop. 12.6 seconds worth of fuel. They've got a lot of fuel in that McLaren.
Yep, I think he might have been fuel to the finish. It's the only thing he could really do, isn't it? Because Coulthard put in 6.7 seconds worth of fuel. Here's D'Amata doing the same thing. They're fueling both of these cars to the finish, and so David Coulthard and Kimi Raikkonen are completely opposite strategies. And here's a man then, Martin, who has damaged his car in the first 3 Grand Prix of the season. He had not even been on the podium yet, and a crash for Michael Schumacher here.
Yes, I mean, you can't point a finger at him or any of the others in there. You know, Montoya's had the same problem. They're on the wrong tyres if you've got a strange situation like that, because if you look around the rest of the track, it's absolutely fine. It's intermediate territory where they are now on the other parts of the racetrack, but for some strange reason, I mean, when it rained earlier on, James, you know, a couple of hours before the race, it was just unbelievable, wasn't it? The rain's bouncing about a metre off the road when it comes down, and somehow or other that water's beginning to re-find its way onto the racetrack as Michael Schumacher muddies a pair of his boots to get back to the pits.
Just to clarify what I was saying a moment ago then about Coulthard and Raikkonen being on different strategies, we believe Coulthard will have to stop again definitely later in the race. He's leading at the moment, waiting to see when the cars come across the start-finish line exactly where Kimi Raikkonen fed back in. We haven't seen him come through that. There he is. He's behind the Jordan, and that means that he's around about 9th or 10th place. We'll wait and see in a moment.
Yes, and there's only 13 runners now, so spray is beginning to be less of an issue, and traffic, of course, and so that might well work out beautifully for Kimi. It's a long way to go. I'd be surprised if he's got another 45, 46 laps worth of fuel, but they, of course, under the safety car conditions, they're using less, and the safety car is going to have to be out for a while till they clear all that debris. Louise?
Yeah, just caught up with Justin Wilson. Justin, that water at turn 3 caught you out. It's obviously catching a few other people out as well. What's the situation there?
Well, there's a river that runs across the circuit. It's running down off the grass banking, and it's changing every lap, so it makes it very difficult to get round.
Is it just a solid stream of water coming across?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, where it's positioned seems to be slightly different each lap, and sometimes it's the first river that's quite bad, and sometimes it's the second one, so that's what caught me out.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Louise. Sorry I had to cut across you when you were putting a piece in earlier on, but had to get in there and get into the Michael Schumacher situation. So Coulthard leads the Grand Prix, and the safety car is pitting this lap. He goes in at the end of the lap, so now Coulthard gets his chance to try and make some advantage at the start. And look, they're bunched up so much that I think the drivers will get a talking to about this, because they really should just pick up a sensible pace and get on with it.
Yeah, Coulthard doing exactly what Barrichello and Raikkonen did before him, which is bunching the field up. Coulthard doing it considerably earlier than the other two, it has to be said. We're still, well, 2/3 of the way around the lap. You can see the lights have gone out on the safety car, but it was around about here that Raikkonen and Barrichello started to bunch them up.
No, it wasn't actually, but I'm just thinking it through, that comment I've just made, because it's a long, long, long way to the pit lane entry, and of course they don't want to have to try and pass that Mercedes before it gets into the pit lane, so he needs to make himself some space. But he's well, once again, I would reiterate that for me that's too slow. Coulthard gets on with it now,
and we're going to be green flag racing again in Interlagos. This is a replay, I believe. No, we're back live again now, and Jenson Button there going through the Junckau corner. There's the safety car going into the pit lane. He's safely off the racetrack. David Coulthard then will bring them round on lap 29 of 71. And what a great restart he's had. And it's Barrichello who's under pressure now from Ralf Schumacher, who goes around the outside. What a move by Ralf Schumacher. Oh, but Rubens is back again on the outside, side by side, into the danger zone. This is where all the water is. They both safely through it. Mark Webber watching it all from behind in 4th place. And now Webber is attacking the back of Ralf Schumacher. What a restart.
Some brave moves going on down there into turn 1. It's great there because it's wide piece of track, and there's equal grip all the way across the track, so it's worth having a go. Inside, outside, you really can't defend your line. And Ralf Schumacher, having had a bit of a nothing weekend, suddenly sees a great opportunity.
Yep, he's 3rd now. He's on a podium position. We want to talk about great opportunities. Let's talk about this Jaguar. Mark Webber, fastest in the wet qualifying session on Friday, as Ralf Schumacher has another go at Barrichello, and now he finds himself here in 4th place in the Jaguar. He could get any kind of result here this afternoon.
Yeah, he's a genuine front runner this weekend. The Jaguar and Mark Webber has been a great combination, and well, let's hope he can make it pay off with some World Championship points there first of the year. Webber right in the hunt, and he'll be loving it.
He certainly looks like he belongs, doesn't he? He's a very composed young man, this 26-year-old Australian, and up the hill they go, you see.
But look at Jenson Button then. He's the white car behind Mark Webber. Button up to 5th place. Also had a solid, if quiet, afternoon so far. Alonso, who had that bizarre situation, we understand, of the wrong tyres on, therefore made 2 stops. He's up to 6th now already. So the traffic suddenly is not such an issue.
This is where the river is. Does it look like it's abating a little bit to you, just subsiding?
Yeah, a little bit, isn't it? But it certainly helps if you keep putting the cars over it, as the wet tyres return that water up into the sky from where it came, and slowly but surely it will take the worst of the problem away.
So we have had 3 safety cars. The first one was to get the race started in the first place, but I have to point out to you, it hasn't rained at all since this race started at 2:15. It hasn't rained again. The reason we've had the other safety cars has been because of accident damage and clearing the track away. So at the moment the conditions seem pretty good. The cloud base is high, and that is Jos Verstappen, who this time definitely is retiring from the race.
And we couldn't really see. It's the famous puddle at turn 3 again, isn't it? And so that's claimed then to Minardi's, the Williams of Montoya, Pizzonia's Jaguar, and the great Michael Schumacher.
It's claimed more than Beecher's Brook, hasn't it?
Certainly has. And he didn't make it as far as the boonies, but he did seem to lose the engine. So Verstappen does now drop out of the race. Slower than Coulthard and Barrichello, so at the moment Raikkonen with a bit of work to do. He's best part of how far behind the race leader is he? He's a full, it must be more than 7 seconds, maybe not, but the computer's showing him 7 seconds behind Coulthard.
Yep, 7.6 it says on the computer, and if he's sitting there with enough fuel to go to the finish, and Coulthard, Barrichello, and we believe Ralf Schumacher and Mark Webber and Jenson Button in front of him all have to pit again, Kimi Raikkonen's not looking too shabby, even if at the moment with that heavy fuel load he's lapping, as you say, about a second off the pace of his teammate who's leading this Grand Prix on lap 32. 71 lap Grand Prix, I remind you, so we're approaching half distance.
Wow.
Feel like we've been working for hours, don't we?
It does indeed. But it's amazing, isn't it? Both McLaren drivers could have won both of the first two Grand Prix of the season. What a turnaround from last year. Coulthard then, this, as I said, this is purely intermediate racetrack stuff until he gets here in the heart of turn 3, and the car just moving around a little bit. It just balances the throttle, just releases the grip on the steering wheel, and not put too much energy into the tyre, and hope and pray that you can get through it on that particular lap.
Well, we haven't been able to see very much in-car footage today, presumably because the helicopter which relays the pictures has not really been able to fly. Oh, and that's Button. He was in a promising position, 5th he was, and he's gone off now. Is that the same place?
Yep. He's gone off further round, though, and then he put some opposite lock in. That was a big accident. Safety cars on standby, but Button was further round turn 3, corrected the slide, and then unfortunately the front tyre did bite, and bang, straight to the scene of the accident. I'm pretty sure he'll be just fine, because the tyres did a good job of slowing him down. Safety car is out again for the 4th time this afternoon.
And what's the value of the machinery sitting on the outside of turn 3 there? It's just broken bits of racing car. Ferraris, BMW Williams, a BAR now, a Jaguar.
I tell you what, if moving it to one wet tyre was to save money, they've blown all that in the wall today.
Absolutely right. I have a feeling we might see a little bit of a change to that regulation. Although how we'll achieve that change, that's quite a different matter. Jenson Button there looks pretty unhurt by his impact, but just blowing his cheeks out there. That was obviously quite a big hit for the British driver. That's the HANS device just sitting on top of his helmet as Pitsonia comes into the pits from, can't see where he was, 8th I think it was.
Yeah, it's
Webber, I beg your pardon.
It's interesting that, James, because Jenson's car got up quite a bit later than the others. He was 2/3 the way round that corner. They were losing it in halfway round, and I just wonder if the water source is changing a bit there, because that was a different accident to all the others.
It would be nice to have a camera down there actually to see exactly what's putting the water out onto the track. It must be some sort of pipe that feeds down. There's a lot of hospitality areas over there, huge tented village, lots of corporate guests overlooking that famous Senna S. It's a bit of prime location for the corporate hospitality, and I just have a feeling there must be a drain pipe feeding out onto the racetrack, and that's what's catching everybody out.
Maybe they're throwing the prawns and smoked salmon out there or something to get some entertainment, but plenty of entertainment so far in this Grand Prix. They are on lap 34. Coulthard leads behind the safety car.
So intriguing strategic considerations here as Antonio Pitsonia walks back, still managing a thumbs up for the Brazilian crowd, and you can hear their response to him. It's not been a great start to his Formula One experience, Martin. He's not really shone at all in that Jaguar in the first 3 Grand Prix. He's really been a long way behind Mark Webber in pace and not really shown all that much.
Hey, yeah, he has. That's interesting. Coulthard, Barrichello and co were heading off to find a little bit of water down that pit straight, as are some of the others. So now, other than the main river in turn 3, now they're actually beginning to burn these tyres out, and that's a double problem for turn 3 then, because as soon as the rubber starts being burned down, worn away, they're even more prone to and that's Ralf Schumacher. That's a replay of an incident earlier in the race, and already then we're beginning to see problems in that corner. But of course, as soon as the tread starts wearing off, then they're going to aquaplane even faster.
Yep, they're using the that's a nasty one, isn't it? They're using the soft intermediate tyres. That's the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. That's something you don't see every day. And the corner workers there having to dive out of the way as well. But they're on standby. They really are on red alert for everybody that's coming to join them here this afternoon on the outside of 3. That's Buttons. You see the front tyres, as Martin said, just bit. And that was a bad hit, wasn't it?
It was indeed. The double layer of tyres doing a great job there.
Lap 35 of this extraordinary 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix. We're on board with Rubens Barrichello. He's in second place. We're behind the safety car here for the 4th time this afternoon. It was raining very heavily at the start of the Grand Prix. It stopped. It hasn't rained again since, but there have been a number of incidents and accidents involving some pretty big names, including Michael Schumacher, Juan Montoya, Olivier Panis, and we are down to just 11 cars. Those are the cars you can see parked on the outside. It's all the trouble is on the outside of turn 3. It's a river that seems to be feeding water out, a drainage system across the track, and at various different points along the way it seems to be feeding it out at different places and at different flow rates, and everybody's been caught out. It'll be very interesting to hear the comments after the race here. Just 2 teams then that have both cars still in the race, and that is McLaren and Renault.
Yeah, we've got a problem now, though. The track is really getting moderately dry in places. It's going to start wearing those tyres out very quickly as D'Amata, the 11th place man, the only Toyota in the race at the moment, pits. But as they wear those tyres out, they're much more prone to aquaplaning in that turn 3. Safety car in this lap then.
Yep, indeed. And D'Amata took a lot of fuel on last time, so this must be showing how the tyres are wearing down. Ted, are you down there?
Yes, James, and this is where Rubens Barrichello is going to be on the move. With the exception of turn 3, of course, the track is drying, and this is where the Michelins give out, and the Ferrari's Brit Jones come in. Back to you.
Yep, D'Amata stalled it. D'Amata has stalled it, so that's a costly problem there for the Toyota driver. He's lost about 10 seconds.
Ironically, I don't think it'll cost him anything, providing he catches the pack, and he knows that. That's why he's hustling it. Providing he catches the pack, which he will easily do before he gets before the safety car comes in at the end of this lap. But I don't think he'll lose anything in the end. But has Mark Webber made a very smart move? He's 10th at the moment, but he just pitted again, and we think he might put a lot of fuel in that car. Maybe Webber of the fast guys this afternoon. Maybe it's Webber that's now got the fastest car with the most fuel.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how the relative performance of the 2 types of tyre works. Ferrari on the Bridgestone, and McLaren and Renault and Mark Webber on the Michelin. As the track dries out, which of the 2 tyres is going to be the best? Barrichello, they're just warming the brakes up, just blipping the throttle. And once again, as we've seen 3 times already this afternoon, and look at this, we're only at half distance, the field bunching up to let that safety car get away from it so they don't encounter it at that very, very high speed run across the start-finish line.
The problem with Webber's strategy, as I said earlier on in the race, though, is the tyres will give up long before the fuel tank does, especially in these drying conditions. Coulthard then getting on with it earlier this time, and away they go up the hill. This, James, is a race of survival. Just 11 runners then and we're just at half distance.
And across the start-finish line we go. It's something a bit like the Grand National, this, isn't it, really? A tough race. Very difficult to say who's going to win it. It's really more about survival than anything else. It's not about outright performance, even though all of these guys are true thoroughbreds. Anyone that can keep a Grand Prix car on the island and out of the Armco barriers is a superstar here this afternoon. And look how close they are. We've got just 11 cars left in the field at half distance in Brazil. Coulthard leading Barrichello, Ralf Schumacher third, Alonso fourth. There you can see that Kimi Raikkonen now is coming up onto the back of Fernando Alonso in that Renault. Fisichella sixth. He's always a man for these dodgy seasons, isn't he? Very good on a slippery track. Jarno Trulli seventh, Frentzen eighth, Villeneuve ninth. Mark Webber, who's made that extra pit stop, that's dropped him down into 10th place. And the last runner on the road is Cristiano De Mata.
Well, Coulthard's mostly seen the back of the safety car this afternoon since he took the lead of the Grand Prix, and he certainly appears to have the pace at the front of the Grand Prix, and they're just really squabbling big time behind him. Might only be 11 runners, but there's still plenty of action in the midfield. Alonso up into fourth, you can see him there, just behind Ralf Schumacher. Alonso then and Raikkonen, the two young men that were such stars in Malaysia, have kept their head, kept their cars in line so far this afternoon.
Yes, it really has been a bit of a lottery, though. If it can catch out Michael Schumacher with just a river of water coming out, it couldn't catch anybody. Look at this, though. This is Raikkonen attacking Alonso, side by side. Look how the car's bouncing as he tries to get the brakes on, and he's done it. A very clean move for position by Kimi Raikkonen. He's now up into fourth place, and he's got more fuel on board than the cars in front. Look how Ralf Schumacher is struggling to control that Williams. Raikkonen got a better drive through three. He's going to be able to take the BMW Williams. They almost touch as they go down the straight. Ralph's on the right, Kimi's on the left. Ralf keeps his foot in it. Kimi tries the outside line. Can he keep it round? Yes. What a move. What a driver this guy is. I mean, what can you say? He's only 23. He's won his first Grand Prix already, and he just doesn't fear anybody or anything.
No, that was spectacular, and it's like, I don't care what you do. I'm going to go a little bit faster. You go inside if you want. You take the racing line. I'll take the outside line then. And Raikkonen then spectacularly taking the place from Ralf Schumacher, and immediately will start turning his attentions to Barrichello just up the road.
What a massive hero. So, look at Alonso. He's on the back of Ralf Schumacher as well as they come down towards the Junckau corner. About 65 miles an hour here in normal dry conditions, picking the throttle up then as they go up the hill. Earlier in the race, this was a few problems. People were having problems with grip here, but at the moment it seems okay. And has Alonso managed to get enough grip? One of the problems he's going to have here is the horsepower disadvantage to the BMW engine in front of him. It just doesn't allow him to get close enough, even though the car does appear to be pretty good under braking, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It was in Malaysia, remember, but Coulthard has just done a new fastest lap of the race, so it rather confirms that most of the track is getting drier, apart from the infamous turn 3 there. And Coulthard and Barrichello, pretty nip and tuck for lap time, just 0.6 of a second behind them. And surprisingly, they were a second faster than Raikkonen, although that included Raikkonen overtaking Ralf Schumacher, of course.
Let's just give you an indication then of how this track has changed. When we were having the heavy conditions, we were around about the 1:30 range, low 1:30s. They came down to 1:28s, 1:25s before the last safety car period. And now the front runners are lapping in the high 1:23s. So that's how much the track has improved as the rain has gone away. It hasn't rained at all since the start of the Grand Prix, and you can see a dry line emerging now.
So Coulthard leads by 0.6 of a second. Raikkonen 4.1 seconds behind second place man Barrichello. Ralf Schumacher's fourth, 1.4 seconds behind Raikkonen. Alonso fifth, just 0.2 behind Ralf in fourth. Fisichella sixth, Trulli seventh. Webber moving up now from that second stop to eighth. Frentzen, Villeneuve, who we haven't seen all afternoon, and De Mata, new fastest lap of the race. 1:23.2 by Rubens Barrichello, and that is why he's glued to the gearbox of the McLaren.
Almost a second faster then than he was the lap before. He's right up with Coulthard, who had not too shabby a lap himself, a 1:23.35. So the track getting faster and faster all the time. We're going to start to see the conditions changing here, and maybe, just maybe, we're not too far away from the need to switch to slick tyres. You can see there the track drying out.
They can't. No way they can put slicks on. They'll never get around turn 3, James. They'll have to make a decision based on 20 metres of racetrack, because they're barely keeping it on the road with a treaded tyre, even if it's a shallow one. So the slick will just be straight off. They'll never build up or keep enough temperature to make it work. Certainly not at the moment. But you do sense there's slightly less water down there, but they'll be keeping a close eye on it. But right now, slicks would be crazy. Ted.
Martin, I've come down to the inside of turn 3. What it is, I don't think you can see it on the camera angle that they're providing. It's a big amphitheatre of a semicircle of grass bank. That's on the outside of the corner. And there are 2 or 3 drainage ditches pouring the water under the Armco and onto the track. The problem is, where the rivers are coming onto the track, it's precisely the point at which the drivers are nailing the throttle to get good traction for the main straight.
Thank you for that, Ted, and it's a long walk down there. Thank you too. Alonso has passed Ralf Schumacher while we were listening to Ted telling us what's happening down at turn 3. Alonso then up into 4th place. Coulthard, a new fastest lap of the race, 1:23.1, but he still is only 0.6 of a second ahead of Barrichello. Raikkonen falling back, 1.6 seconds a lap at the moment. So at this stage of the Grand Prix, Raikkonen not so happy. He did pit later than the 2 in front of him, so maybe he's carrying a bit more fuel, but certainly his car's not in the zone right now.
No, he's in 3rd place, 7 seconds behind the race leader. Alonso is just 3 seconds behind him. Ralf Schumacher then has fallen behind Alonso into 5th place. Fisichella is just 3 seconds behind 5th place man Ralf Schumacher. There's going to be good points to be had for a number of these guys today. Trulli is 7th. He's had 2 points finishes already this season. Webber is 8th, the last man in the points, but he's definitely still a threat, having changed his pit strategy. It's going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out for him. Frenson 9th, 10th field. Have a look. That's a replay of Alonso and Ralf Schumacher.
That's good stuff if Alonso gets around the outside of Magullo. They're driving, all the kids are driving all around the outside of him this afternoon, and that was extremely impressive from Alonso. Around the outside of Magullo. That was actually probably taking too much of a risk in reality.
Yeah, it was a very brave move. So both Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen, 21 years old and 23 years old, again attacking drivers here at Interlagos when conditions are difficult. Incident involving car number 8 under investigation by the race stewards, and that is Fernando Alonso. I wonder if it's anything to do with that move.
Well, I doubt it, because I couldn't see any reason why. Maybe it's speeding or something in the pit lane, because he certainly didn't do anything wrong there, did he? But Coulthard really under pressure now. Barrichello just set a new fastest lap. They're just edging a 1/10 of a second off. There it is, 1:23.0. And in the middle of the lap, Coulthard, it seems to have enough grip, but for some reason, under braking, Barrichello can just take a few metres out of him.
Drive-through penalty then for car number 8, overtaking under yellow flags. That was what the incident was. Presumably it was the move on Ralf Schumacher. What we couldn't see from the TV pictures was whether there were waved yellow flags down there in the corner where he passed him.
I don't think there was. There's hardly enough cars. We seem to know where they all are at the moment. I tell you where I bet that was, James. Bit of a guess, but I bet he overtook somebody before he passed the start-finish line behind the safety car. You're not allowed to pass till you've crossed the start-finish line, and I don't know if 21-year-olds read the rule book properly.
Well, they've got teams to tell them as well, but yes, it's quite possible, isn't it? Look at Rubens, though. He's getting closer now to the back of David Coulthard, and one senses an attack coming here from the Ferrari driver. 29 laps to go here at Interlagos. Anyone could win this race, but Rubens is on the move.
Yeah, Coulthard really struggling now with grip. In comes Alonso for the drive-through. Coulthard felt the need then to already go defensive. He knows he's beginning to struggle compared to Rubens Barrichello, but they're still pulling away from the rest of the field. At sort of 2.5 seconds a lap, these leading pair. They are absolutely hooked up.
Well, both of them sense a chance to win. Rubens Barrichello was second last time out in Malaysia. David Coulthard has already tasted the winner's champagne this year at Melbourne, Australia, and he really senses a chance to get on top in the World Championship, particularly for both of these guys, as Michael Schumacher is not scoring any points this afternoon. The world champion has put his car into the tyre barriers and has been out of the race now for some time, so a great opportunity now for both of these guys.
Yes, I wonder if McLaren will be thinking about a stop soon for Coulthard. Seems like he's struggling for mechanical grip. He's understeering a lot in the high speed. He's struggling a bit on traction as well. And as I said, the Ferrari definitely got Barrichello definitely more confidence under braking.
Well, Coulthard pitted on lap 19. We have had 3 more safety cars since then, but certainly his fuel would have taken him under normal circumstances sort of into the mid-40s, so he's probably going to run out of fuel before too long anyway, and maybe, as you say, he might feel that a change of tyres is the right thing. Rubens Barrichello, we believe, also has to stop again. We think that Kimi Raikkonen might not have to, certainly the way the safety cars have played into his hands. Fuel-wise, he may well be okay. It's really a question of the tyres. Will they last?
Of this leading bunch, albeit still 1.7 seconds a lap slower, and this pair are just absolutely driving away from the field at the moment. They're racing each other, they're pulling each other, pushing each other, and do not want to yield. This whoever wins this race today, I'm sure, will put the trophy somewhere very special. This is such a sporting challenge.
It's very, very difficult, and whoever wins this race today will well and truly deserve it. It's been a chaotic race, no question about it. Oh, that's Webber. He spun it. Same place as everyone else. Can he rescue? Yes, he can. Well, he's done something no one else managed to do, and he's still in the Grand Prix.
Save of the day, then, for Mark Webber. That was amazing. Looked like he was on his surfboard in Bondi Beach, didn't he? Hooked it all up and just carried on. Nicely done.
Best save since Gordon Banks. Fantastic. So, lap 44, look at this battle here at the lead, for the lead between Barrichello and Coulthard. This time round, Barrichello not quite so close to David Coulthard. And, he's made a mistake, and Barrichello's through into the lead. Listen to the crowd. Fantastic, fantastic performance. Looks to me like there's more water coming out on that track as well, down there outside of turn 3.
Rubens takes a wider, higher line. And the crowd don't like that very much, do they? The boy who grew up 2 streets away from this racetrack now leads the Grand Prix. With a stunning middle sector, much faster than anybody else has been all day. Crosses the line in the lead of the Grand Prix. Barrichello has been released and is off.
Indeed he is, and already half a second faster than he was on the lap before. He's being lifted by the crowd. He feels their support. He wants to win here more badly than he's ever wanted anything else in his life, probably. And if he can just keep it going, this is lap 46 of 71. What a hero he's going to be in São Paulo, Brazil.
So he was some 2.5 seconds quicker than Coulthard on that lap. We saw, of course, Coulthard running wide, losing time, so that accounts for some of it. But right now, those Bridgestone Inters are just working beautifully for Rubens Barrichello. And look at that virtually dry line there, James, through Ferradura.
Yes, it's interesting to look down on the timesheets here. Giancarlo Fisichella, a man to keep an eye out for. He's the highest placed Bridgestone runner after Barrichello. The guys between them are all on Michelins, and Fisichella is lapping in the 124s. He's a good bit off the pace of Barrichello, but he's faster than all the guys in front of him. He's faster than Ralf Schumacher, Kimi Raikkonen and David Coulthard at this stage in the race. So perhaps you should just explain to us, Martin, the whole concept of a drying line and what this is doing, why this tyre is working better on the Ferrari than it is on the Michelins.
Well, the construction of the tyre is one thing, and the rubber compound's another, and Bridgestone and Michelin are virtually diametrically opposed as to how they go about their Grand Prix racing tyre. And we saw in wetter conditions Michelin definitely had an edge, but right now the rubber, the tread on those Bridgestones are definitely hanging on better. He's 1.9 quicker than Coulthard, who's 1.6 quicker than anybody else. Barrichello flying off into the distance now, and you can't do that unless the car's underneath you and the tyre's working.
And the drying line appearing, you're looking for it all the time, obviously trying to stay on the dry stuff as much as possible, but do you not have to keep these things quite cool as well?
Yeah.
Oh, he's slowing, is he?
Yes, he is.
He's slowing, Rubens Barrichello. I don't believe it. He's retired here 8 years in a row. He was leading here last year and this happened. Coulthard goes past him. Raikkonen goes past him. Ralf Schumacher goes past him. And you hear that thump. That's thousands of hearts in São Paulo in the grandstands hitting the floor. Rubinho is out of the race. Oh, my goodness.
No. Nobody can be that unlucky.
Both Ferraris out of the race then. No one could or should be that unlucky. What can you say? That's the 9th straight year he's retired here, and he had it won.
Yeah, and if I was him, I'd get out of there. It seems to be safer on the racetrack today than on the grass. The number of cars have been flying across the grass. And Rubens Barrichello, well, you can't say anything. There's nothing to be said. The guy was driving beautifully. He had the car where he needed it, scampering off into the distance, and it just evaporates.
Well, you have to go back some way for the last time that a Ferrari didn't finish the Grand Prix. But lap 48, David Coulthard now will be feeling relatively comfortable, I would think. Kimi Raikkonen is his nearest challenger, and he's a full 15 seconds behind.
Yeah, but he's way quicker than the rest of the field still, and it's this 38 minutes of this race remaining, James, with, 24 laps, so it's going to be nip and tuck, isn't it, of whether it runs out of time or runs out of laps.
Yes, that's certainly going to be an issue, no question about that. Coulthard, too, is going to have to make a pit stop before too long. He put in 6.7 seconds worth of fuel on lap 19. We've had a couple of safety cars, and, well, if a picture could paint 1,000 words, then what would Rubinho be saying? No one dares approach him.
He's such a nice bloke as well. He's such a genuine, proper bloke that, you know, he just... the emotions must be going through his head now, and what have I got to do? What have I done wrong? Who have I upset in another life? Because, you know, as I said earlier, he grew up 2 or 3 streets away from here. Oh, Coulthard getting a big slide into the Young Cow corner, and hold on to it and heads into, or towards another lap. When can we expect these McLaren in the pits? So difficult to work out. We don't know how much fuel they save behind the 4 safety cars. We can have a guess at it, and they use about half as much fuel, but this is a tricky afternoon. The engineers will know exactly, of course, in the pits, because they've got the information being beamed from the car. Ted?
I'm just at the back of the Ferrari garage, Martin. I can tell you, I just spoke to Ross Brawn. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know. He's gone into the back of the garage, have a look at the telemetry screens, see what he can find out. I'll let you know as soon as we know.
Well, yeah, Ross Brawn there, the technical director of the Ferrari team, obviously having a bit of a look at it. Ralf Schumacher has dived into the pits, so he's the first of the front runners to make his second stop of the afternoon. He's taking on fresh rubber, that's what he needs. He's also getting some more fuel. That'll fuel him to the end of this race, no question about that. He came in from 4th position, and he will feed back in behind Trulli, Alonso, Frentzen as well. Hey, this guy's 3rd. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan on the Bridgestone intermediate tyres is in 3rd place in the Grand Prix. Now, we haven't really seen when he made his pit stop earlier on. He came in, we know, on lap 7 and put a lot of fuel in the car. So we presume he has to come in again as he just puts another lap there on Cristiano Di Matta. But he's a figure.
Yeah, but look at that McLaren. That's Kimi Raikkonen, 2nd place man. Raikkonen had a very slow lap last time around, 4 or 5 seconds off the pace. So Fisichella now just 2.5 seconds adrift of the 2nd place man. Jordan desperately needs some points this afternoon. Furman's out of the race, broken suspension. Be surprised if Furman's car didn't have a tag earlier on in the race. But Fisichella then homing in on Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, Jordan yet to get off the mark this season on the points table, so this would be a great result for them if Fisichella could get himself up onto the podium. His 3rd place would be great. 2nd, well, what a reward that would be. New point system this year, 8 points for 2nd place, 6 for 3rd.
Hey, look out the window, James. The crowd are leaving. Some of the crowd are leaving. Their man is out of the Grand Prix. And how many Brazilians we got left in it at the moment? Pizzonia's in the wall. Di Matta's still running in 10th place, but a lap adrift. And so their main man, Barrichello, out of the race, and they're going home. A few of them, but they're going home.
Well, there've been yellow flags been shown at turn 5 for some time now. They've taken those in, and clearly a lot of drivers have to be very careful not to fall into the same trap as Fernando Alonso, who overtook a car under waved yellow flags. If you add that problem that he had to the problem of having to come in again for tyres because for some reason he was on slicks at the wrong moment, and Alonso being in 4th place looks like quite a mighty effort, really, considering the setbacks he's had. Let's face it, he's only 28 seconds behind the race leader after all that's happened to him.
Yes, but again, if he caught the snake up behind the safety car, another stop wouldn't have actually cost him anything in terms of racetrack time. Coulthard leads by 21 seconds last time around, and he's now lapping in the late 1:25. When will he have to stop? Does Kimi Raikkonen have to stop? And Coulthard, if not, I would have thought Kimi does, I have to say. But, oh, David just hanging on to it. But that's the point I was talking about. As soon as the tyres start wearing, you're going to start aquaplaning earlier.
Trulli and Frentzen, look at this. This is a scrap for 5th place. You saw Villeneuve get a mighty slide on there through the left-hander leading out of the back straight. And these three right together, 5th, 6th and 7th, Frentzen, Trulli, Villeneuve. That's a fantastic scrap going on. They're about a half a minute behind race leader David Coulthard. And these conditions not getting any easier at all. The tyres, as you say, Martin, wearing away. And this is a very difficult time to be on the racetrack.
Yes, if you've got fresh tyres on, you've got a much better chance of getting through turn 3 there. So we've got 10 runners then, and of course points-paying positions for the first 8. So that's why it's rather frantic. Ralf Schumacher's now back in 9th, D'Amato 10th. So a great opportunity for World Championship points today for Jaguar, Jordan, and Toyota maybe not.
Certainly Sauber with Frentzen in 5th place at the moment if he can stay there. But I tell you, the man to watch at the moment is Mark Webber. That last lap was his fastest of the race so far. The fuel load that he put on is starting to wear off, and his performance already this weekend has been fantastic. He's trying to catch these guys. Look at Villeneuve sliding the car everywhere as D'Amato gets out of the way for these guys, and Villeneuve's trying pretty hard as well. But Webber is trying to catch onto the tail of this scrap.
Raikkonen has now speeded back up again. He's now closing the deficit to David Coulthard. And look, Villeneuve trying and looking. We've seen so many cars passed on the outside, the inside, everywhere. Villeneuve up on the curbs. He'll lose a lot of traction. And watch the Renault just pull away from him. You cannot run the curbs in these conditions. You can't always help it. Fisichella is pushing hard as well. He's just done his fastest lap of the race, and he's pushing Raikkonen along, and they're catching race leader David Coulthard.
Meanwhile, Mark Webber took 2.5 seconds out of that bunch on that lap, so he is closing right in. There he is at the top of your screens. He's just going to dispatch Cristiano D'Amato, the back marker. He'll get out of his way, and then Webber will be joining that scrap too. It'll be a 4-way battle for 5th place. So on lap 52, McLaren are getting ready then for a pit stop. We presume it's going to be for David Coulthard. Certainly fuel-wise, he's ready for it, and tyre-wise, he's desperate for it.
Yes, I think Coulthard's going to have to go and take this race today. Although he's got an 18.4 second lead, we've seen him really struggling with grip for probably 10 laps now. They want, we've got 20 laps to go, 19 at the end of this lap. The race leader, we're pretty sure, is going to pit, and indeed he does. Look at the water standing in the entry of the pit lane. Coulthard then has got to get it slowed down, just. Hope he didn't go over that white line speeding, otherwise he'll get a penalty. And Coulthard comes into the pit lane. He needs a super quick stop.
He does. The target here is to get back out in front of Fernando Alonso. Kimi Raikkonen's going to pass him. I think Fisichella will as well. Ted?
It's all going very, very, very well for David Coulthard. Wet tyres go on again. Now he's away. I can just tell you very quickly that I've been to Ferrari again, and they say that it was a complete shutdown of the car. They won't know what the problem was until they get the actual car back to the pits. The telemetry showed nothing.
Fisichella then, look, he's now up into 2nd place behind Raikkonen. Just the small, it was 0.8 of a second as they passed the start-finish line. And there comes Coulthard out behind Alonso. So he is 4th, but he's got the fresh tyres and he's got enough fuel to get to the end.
Yeah, we think Raikkonen also has enough fuel to get to the end. We don't know about Fisichella, but I think he must have to stop again. Alonso's been into the pits more times than most of the mechanics this weekend. He's made 3 stops. One presumes he doesn't have to refuel again. And that's bad news, really, then, for David Coulthard to feed in behind Alonso. It's just what he didn't want.
I think he'll be able to pass him down the straight because he's got more straight line speed in the McLaren than the Renault, it appears, so far through the weekend. But Fisichella's about to lead a Grand Prix in a Jordan. He did do that, of course, Nürburgring 97 when it was Fisichella, Ralf Schumacher working with Jordan, but really right up there. And we know that at this sector of the race, those Bridgestones, which Fisichella is on, have been working very nicely. Frentzen's proving that in 5th place. He's just done the fastest first sector of anybody through the entire 52 laps.
Well, Renault are already out there in the pit lane for one of their 2 cars, both of them still running. Jarno Trulli is the other man. Look at the pressure he's coming under, though, from Jacques Villeneuve. So will it be Trulli that makes the pit stop? And does Villeneuve need to attack him if that's the case? Let's see. Yes, it is Trulli that comes into the pits. That's good news for Villeneuve. He's up to 6th now. So the order on lap 54. Raikkonen, Fisichella, Alonso, Coulthard, Frentzen just set the fastest first sector of the race so far. The track is definitely getting faster. Villeneuve 6, Webber 7, Trulli now down to 8th as he makes his pit stop.
So Coulthard car's going to come under pressure from Resurgent Frentzen. They're 4th and 5th at the moment. Villeneuve does the fastest first sector of the race. That water then, that's it in the first sector in turn 3, surely clearing away a little bit now. But Raikkonen's gone a long way on these tyres. He stopped back on lap 27, did Kimi Raikkonen. So those tyres are going to be getting pretty second-hand by now.
Yeah, and Fisichella's tyres have done a fair bit of work as well. Here we go, Fisichella takes the lead. What a move. What happened to Raikkonen?
He just got the same with Coulthard earlier on. He just got a terminal understeer, and I'm sure they're burning out those front Michelins, and Fisichella leads the Grand Prix. Raikkonen will surely have to stop for some tyres.
Well, yes, and in he comes. Is he coming in? No, he's not. It's very deceptive, that pit lane entry line. So here we see again what happened to Kimi Raikkonen. Just got a twitch on, you see. Yeah,
got a twitch on, steered out of it. Actually, I was wrong. It wasn't understeer. It was actually a little bit of oversteer just on that nasty bump into Mergullo. It looked like understeer on the exit, but actually it was just him having to steer into the slide.
So if you wanted proof that the Bridgestone is the tyre to be on right now, take a look at Jacques Villeneuve in 6th place. He's just done the fastest first sector of the race so far. His best lap of the race so far in a 1:22.7. He's beginning to come into frame, and that's a big shunt for Mark Webber. It looks like he's okay, though, that he's taken half the car off.
Is that in the pit straight? It is in the pit straight, and it will be an enormous accident then, because that's something like 150 miles an hour. It's the back end of the Jaguar's got away from him. Safety car out, of course, and this will play into the hands of anybody who's yet to stop for fuel, because there's so much debris. Raikkonen comes in the pits.
Yep, Raikkonen's going to change those tyres. We don't know whether he needed to take fuel, but certainly he... yep, Fisichella coming in as well, the race leader for Jordan. Looks like the Jordan team are beginning... Well, I haven't seen actually the Jordan team getting ready out there. Not sure that's the case, but certainly McLaren are ready for Raikkonen. That was a nasty shunt, wasn't it?
So who's going to lead this Grand Prix then? Fisichella and Raikkonen, we think, are stopping. They've got to find their way through this mess somehow. There's the race leader, and there's Mark Webber, who's done such a great job this weekend. Back end of the car, getting away from him. I don't really understand why at this stage of the Grand Prix, in torrential rain or a lot of water standing. Oh! And we've got another car.
Alonso.
We think Alonso's come round and probably found...
Race stopped.
Red flag, race has stopped. Alonso, he's obviously come through there and either lost the car in the same place or suddenly realised there was a big incident and hit the brakes.
And I believe we're past three-quarter race distance, lap 55, in which case we may well be declaring a result here. We need to calculate that for you. But
and it'll go back.
Yes,
it'll go back
certainly.
one lap. So
Martin, I have to interrupt you because the Jordan team are bouncing up and down in the pit lane. We're looking at the images there of that incident of Alonso. Debris all over the track. As far as the Jordan team are concerned, this race is over and they have won it. Now the result is calculated, Martin. There's Alonso, you can see, just been winded in that incident at the least, doesn't he? It
was a horrible accident. He came through the corner and found all the debris on the racetrack. I'm surprised that he didn't see some yellow flags or something. Surprised the team maybe hadn't radioed him and just had to avoid it and went into a very nasty accident. He's limping away, and that's super high-speed stuff and nowhere to go up there. And Alonso choosing to sit down at this stage and collect a bit of oxygen in his lungs, I'd imagine. And you can see the front wing of his car sitting there. But they do a count back. We'll have to see what the count back is to the last complete lap. So was it Raikkonen or was it Fisichella?
Yeah, what lap did Fisichella pass Raikkonen? Oh!
Nasty. He hit the stationary tyre, of course, and terrible accident there for Fernando Alonso. I just cannot believe, with flags and radio, he wasn't aware that that was all situated on the high part of the racetrack here.
Yeah, he's taken a big hit there, hasn't he? No, that was a very, very nasty accident for Fernando Alonso. Let's hope he's okay. He's sitting down, and you can see the medics have got to him very swiftly. So, well, we came on the air saying, how could we possibly explain to you the circumstances that had led up to this Grand Prix? But it'll take some time to pick the bones out of this one. There's Kimi Raikkonen. You can see he's got new tyres on that car. We're waiting to see whether or not we are going to restart it. Certainly, if we're more than 75% of the way through the race, then that would be a result. And I think we are more than 75% of the way through this 71-lap Grand Prix. And those pictures tell their own story. That is the Jordan team In the foreground there is Nessie, one of the truckies who joined that team from Arrows, and he's obviously been a good luck talisman for them. That's Alonso there. You can just getting treatment, Martin.
I'm just reading Article 160 here of the regulations that should, for any reason, the end of the race signal be given before the scheduled number of laps are completed, or the prescribed time has been completed, the race will be deemed to have finished when the leading car crossed the line before the signal was given. So he did cross the line in the lead, didn't he? Fisichella wins the Grand Prix if they choose not to restart, and you have to believe with 27 minutes remaining, and that's a Jordan on fire in the pit lane.
It's Fisichella, of course. The car's on fire. The race-winning car in Parc Ferme has caught fire. Well, if ever you wanted a bizarre day, this is surely it.
Take it easy to the airport. It's just all happening, isn't it? As Eddie Jordan, Fisichella passed him, of course, in Megullo, didn't he? So Giancarlo crossed the line in the lead. It wasn't on the red flag lap, it was the lap before. So the winner of the Grand Prix, if they choose not to restart, there are 27 minutes remaining of the Grand Prix, but we're running out of time, and we'll take a short break.
Yes, we'll come back to Interlagos in just a moment. Extraordinary circumstances. Fernando Alonso still being treated by the side of the track. The race was stopped by the Mark Webber crash. Alonso actually collided with the wheel of Webber after the race was officially stopped. There was still conjecture about whether there would be a restart, but having passed the necessary number of laps, there's no doubt that we will get a decision, but the big question is how many laps back do we go to count the winner? It is officially 2 laps back, so we'll come back and try and sort that out for you in just a moment. Back to Interlagos, and as I said before the break, it looks as though Jordan is jumping the gun, and they're not the only ones. In a very confusing day here in Brazil, you have to go back 2 laps before the crash that stops the race. The crash was Mark Webber's. You go back 2 laps and it's Raikkonen winning the race from Fisichella. Difficult circumstances for poor old Jordan. I believe Ron Dennis from McLaren was stony-faced. They were not celebrating, but they were questioning what was happening. Now, we'll just recap for you. We haven't had it confirmed yet officially, but we think it's Raikkonen, Fisichella, Alonso. It's the top 3. There is still the remains of the Alonso crash, and Fernando not feeling too well. He probably won't be able to make it to the podium by the sound of it. Coulthard, Frentzen, Villeneuve, this is outside the top 3. Mark Webber will, in fact, take championship points for the first time for Jaguar if what we're saying is actually true, and I'm pretty sure it will be, truly in 8th place. An extraordinary day. The man who's on the podium will not be able to make it for the celebrations, and unfortunately the 2 guys ahead of him, Neil, are going to be one disappointed and one quite surprised.
Well, Alonso limped out of the car, but when you look at the velocity with which he hit that barrier, that was just a frightening accident, and I'm surprised and very happy that in fact he has got out of the car. And I mean, obviously he has some sort of an injury, but he's largely okay. I've got the FIA Formula 1 sporting regulations, Bill, and you've got to go to stopping the race case C, which we knew was likely to be the case, and on a day like this I had them ready to hand. But if 75% or more of race distance, brackets rounded up to the nearest whole number of laps, which we pre-calculated at 54, the cars will be sent directly to Parc Ferme, and the race will be deemed to have finished when the leading car crossed the line at the end of the lap, 2 laps prior to that which the signal to stop was given. So the bottom line there is that you go back 2 laps and determine the order from that point, and this is where Jordan and this man, Giancarlo Fisichella, have just done their maths a little incorrectly in celebrating a victory, which I don't believe is going to be the case.
It's, of course, in a way sad, because it would have been only Jordan's 4th Grand Prix victory, and we would have been spruiking about Fisichella's maiden victory and all sorts of other things. But
having said that, he's going to finish second, and that's pretty handsome in Jordan's 200th Grand Prix as Frentzen moves to the back of the garage, having finished what we believe to be in 5th position if you go back 2 laps prior to the red flag signal being given. But that both those incidents involving Webber and Alonso, really frightening incidents. And I mean, what's going to happen here, Bill, when all the mud and dust settles from this whole exercise is that everybody's going to look very carefully at this one wet tyre regulation where both Michelin and Bridgestone are forced to bring just one type of wet in order to save time and money. I don't think that's going to work in certain circumstances, and today you could see that when they knocked the square edge off the wet tyre, it started to round and became a worn wet weather tyre, and really it's an intermediate. We should keep emphasising that it's really an intermediate wet weather tyre, not a full deep wet. Then the cars became very dangerous, and normally you know, you would be able to maintain control, but when the tyre wore down so badly, people were going off at turn 3 everywhere.
Now, what are we seeing here, Neil? Are we seeing some realisation from Jordan that maybe they haven't won? Eddie's gesturing there. Is he saying 1 or 2 with his fingers? Fisichella looks like he's just been given some information, so it looks like they've looked up at the podium or the scoreboard or some sort of information there now. Eddie Jordan is saying, are we second? Have we not won the race? Of course, the mobile phone's running hot. Coulthard is obviously keen to see what's happening here because it's a remarkable turnaround for the team, not necessarily for him. He would take 4th position, but...
And he'd be pretty stiff because he was just looking pretty good there and then took that stop and... But you just can't forecast these circumstances. What about the amount of damage on the front of that car? What about the amount of damage on those cars that were parked on the other side? There was a graveyard almost of Formula 1 cars on the exit of turn 3. An extraordinary cost attached to all this today. And again, one of the reasons why on April the 20th, when they reconvene this meeting for the discussion regarding the rules, they need to think carefully about the wet weather tyre rules going forward for the rest of the year, because that's too much damage, too much carnage, too much of an unpredictable result.
You have to wonder when Mark Webber is going to turn this very encouraging and impressive speed into a bit of luck.
Hasn't he done a fantastic job all weekend? I mean, fastest in the wet on Friday, qualified 3rd in the dry, had great poise throughout the race. It was interesting to look at the performance of both brands of tyre through the race. Initially, Bill, the Michelin looked very good in the heavy wet conditions at the start. As it started to just dry off fractionally, the Bridgestone started to come back, but it's a real tyre battle this year between both brands. But Webber's done a terrific job. I don't know, as Martin said there in the commentary a moment ago, hard to work out precisely what's happened and why he threw it away at that point on the circuit, but I suspect it's just the fact that the tyres are going away, because some parts of the track had a distinctive dry line and wet weather tyres don't cope with that, but other parts where there was running water, you still obviously needed a groove tyre. You notice that some of the drivers, in particular Coulthard, before he took that stop, was searching for wet parts of the track to cool out the tyres and try and protect the square edge on the wet.
Look at the faces on the Jordan crew now, considerably different to what we saw a few moments ago, and I feel for them. A very, very difficult day all round. I mean, you would have to be extremely happy to get on the podium today, but to have what looked like a certain victory taken away, and we'll find out in just a moment. Remember, in Melbourne, the drivers hurried up to the podium. Yes, there it is. Kimi Raikkonen is the winner, and disappointment all round for Jordan. But nevertheless, as you say, Neil, I mean, when they can look back on this result, it's still an outstanding performance. And on a day when it was very difficult to just stay in the race for so many drivers. And, well, there'll be a lot said about Schumacher's performance as well. This is giving them a big start in 2003. He did manage to salvage some points, even though he didn't get on the podium in the first 2 races, but this is a hefty loss of points.
People like Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello, Juan Pablo Montoya, disastrous day, and now starting to be a real problem for them in their championship chase for points, and in particular for Michael. So it'll be San Marino before he potentially corrects things. But look at a number of corrections, the amount of drama that various people were having through the course of this motor race, and just lacking grip. Eddie Jordan reflecting with his crew, but still a tremendous performance for them. And Fisichella in the back stages of the race, we were watching the live timing here. He had great lap speed. That little car was working well, and those tyres, the Bridgestone tyres on that car, were functioning well. He was continuing to pile on the pressure. He described yesterday his qualifying lap as near perfect. He said it was just a terrific lap and the car was working extremely well, and let's hope that they're going to be more competitive. They've certainly had a tough run in the early couple of races.
I wonder how Raikkonen feels about the situation now. Alan Moffat said to me late last year when we were talking generally about motorsport and careers, he said once you win that first race, suddenly things can really escalate for you, and it certainly has for Raikkonen. Now it's become 2 races and who knows how many in the future. Fisichella second, a remarkable day though. Alonso on the podium. Coulthard, good result for McLaren in terms of the Constructors' Championship. Frentzen in 5th is not a bad result either for Sauber. And Villeneuve, well, he went missing a bit for most of this race, but managed to salvage some points for BAR, and that's encouraging after Button's very nasty exit, and Webber in the points as well. But look who's not in the points. A few Bridgestones there in that mix, but some big names too.
And a great start to the championship for McLaren with 3 wins from 3 races, so good news for them, as you pointed out, in the Constructors' Championship, and Raikkonen now having grabbed 2 wins. We'll go to the podium with the anthems.
Well, the old saying, if it doesn't rain, it pours. You can say that of the weather in Brazil, and you can say that of the career of Kimi Raikkonen. He finally breaks through, and then within a couple of weeks has win number 2 in the World Drivers' Championship. And on that subject, his lead is strengthened. And what a turnaround these new rules have produced. Not perhaps directly, but certainly the reshuffling of the field, coupled with circumstances like the weather we've seen this weekend, has seen a lot more passing than we're used to, and some drama as well. I don't know whether we'd like to see so many crashes, so many big names out of the race, but I think that was more due to the conditions than the rules themselves. Nevertheless, you cannot argue with the results, and the championship has been shaken up. I suppose if you're a Schumacher fan, you would argue that perhaps the best driver hasn't been able to produce his best, but still the mistakes have been there, and we saw that again today. And the reason, of course, that you don't see a third driver on that podium, if you've just joined us or you fell asleep, Fernando Alonso was injured in that last crash. After Webber's crash actually stopped the race, it was Webber's crash that caused the stoppage. Alonso crashed into debris, hit Webber's wheel, and looks okay, but is injured and couldn't make it onto the podium, which is disappointing because it was a landmark result for him.
His second, third place for him in a row.
After that pole in Sepang, extraordinary situation here in Brazil, and as if we didn't have enough to talk about, this championship is even more alive. We'll take a break. Well, that'll keep you awake on an early Monday morning in Australia, but Fernando Alonso will have one heck of a headache.